What's a sign a kid has terrible parents? Story 1. They form an unhealthy attachment to any authority figure and treat any kind of adult as a parental figure or friend, even when it isn't appropriate. It makes kids much more vulnerable to further abuse as they believe they're mature enough for a platonic relationship with grown adults. Speaking from experience, unfortunately. This is a good one. I'm friends with a married couple who adopted a daughter who was, to put it mildly, assaulted by her own father. She took to me and treated me like a father figure. Her adopted parents are both women, for context. Almost immediately. Every time I go to their house, she asks me to go for a walk with her and just absolutely trauma dumps things no 11-year-old should ever have to go through. It's heartbreaking. I'm always there for her and supportive, but the second I get home, I just break down. I'm just a kid. I'm still just a little kid. I shouldn't even know about these things yet. She's an amazing, intelligent, strong little girl, and I really hope her future throws her past into a wood chipper. I just want to say, I was the kid in a very similar scenario, no longer a kid now, and I just want to say thank you for listening and going on walks with her and supporting her. I am sure it means just so much to her. I remember from a very young age feeling I could not speak of many things I saw and experienced because I saw how upset it made adults to hear. A lot of anger, a lot of denial or disbelief or depression and powerlessness. It's really hard to protect a kid from a parent. So, as a kid, I bottled it up and learned to smile and pretend everything was okay and to keep the adults happy. In twisted kid logic, I didn't want to be left alone with the parents, so I had to keep the other adults happy. I had to pretend everything was okay because sharing how it really was upsetting the other adults. So thank you, and all the adults along the way who did let the kids go on walks with them and to talk about things that hurt and support them even when it hurts you so much and you feel powerless. You being there and her being heard and feeling safe to share those things means so much more than you can imagine. Dude, this just whomped me. I used to call my teachers during the summer to have someone to talk to who I felt understood me. Fortunately, they were all nice people, but I never thought about it like this. It's blown my mind. Oh wow, me too. I have a borderline plus narcissistic mom, and I was always super attached to my teachers. Especially one of them in 7th grade. I would spend lunch in her office and help her grade papers, and make her art and get her presents. She was always so wonderful to me, accepting and supportive as though this attention was just fine. But looking back, she must have known things were not quite right at home. I also formed a parasocial relationship with my favorite singer as a teenager, opting out of college and traveling to concerts to see her, for years. She was and is amazing to her fans, would invite me backstage to talk about my problems, what have you. So yeah, this one resonates. Oh god, and my nephew, whose mom, my brother's former girlfriend, is a very troubled person, called my husband Daddy the first time he met him, at like 4 years old, and cried and didn't want to go home. I had an employee who worked for me from 14 years old to 18 years old. She was very attached to my family and me. Long story short, we closed up shop and moved states. She reached out to me in tears 1 year later because she needed advice. Her parents asked her to move out because she had overstayed her welcome with them and she didn't know if moving in with her new 29-year-old boyfriend was right. I offered to take her in, create a resume for her, teach her how to apply for jobs, and help her get on her feet to be able to support herself. She moves in with us in 2 weeks. Story 2. Not being bathed, distracted, hungry, injured, lethargic, behavior issues, not wanting to go home. Not being bathed is one of the most definitive ones. A lot of these others can be abused, but can also be personality styles or mental illnesses that have nothing to do with the home situation. But assuming you know that the child is housed and their parents have enough money to keep the water on, a big assumption sometimes, kids who are clearly filthy all the time are being neglected. My SO was a public school teacher in rural Louisiana for a few years while in grad school. She had students whose families still literally had dirt floors. Those parents often tried everything in their power to send their kids to school clean. She said she had a kid who came from a comparatively well-to-do family, and the kid clearly bathed very rarely. She said that alone set off red flags with teachers. One of the worst cases of neglect or abuse I've seen was like this, consistently projected machismo, and always had some sort of game going. until he couldn't take it anymore and broke down crying in front of another teacher and me. She was his safe person. Poor dude hadn't been sleeping to protect his little sisters from their stepfather and stealing food for months to keep them all fed. CPS was called, and I think they ended up with their grandfather. I never saw him again, and I hope he's doing okay. Seen all kinds of kids in all kinds of situations. There is no obvious red flag, but there are certain signs that might, maybe, possibly point to something. I have seen multiple kids from this exact same household all act completely different. The dirty, distracted, hungry, lethargic kid with behavioral issues turned out to just be that way. The family was otherwise pristine. Later in life, the kid who had no idea why he was getting flagged for this stuff admitted to just being a pain in the ass. On the flip side, we have seen too many cases of kids who you would believe had perfect home lives, later attempting suicide or presenting issues later in life, college or after. There is no red flag, sadly. You really have to talk to and get to know everyone, and even then, so much can slip through the massive cracks. Story 3. I don't know if it's the first sign, but I was teaching a small class of children, and one child in particular would speak very negatively of himself. As though someone in his life, like a parent, had said those things to him on many occasions and he'd internalized them. There was one day in particular when he'd answered a question incorrectly and then proceeded to call himself stupid over and over. I reassured him that he was not stupid, but you could tell by the look on this poor boy's face he believed he was. When I was younger and in school, I struggled, still do, in math. I was always placed in a special ed, that's what the teachers called it, class, aka remedial math. I would always tell myself I was stupid for having a hard time. My dad and family never once would call me stupid or make me feel bad for not understanding right away. It was really hard for me to believe anyone who would say I'm not stupid. Sometimes kids just have low self-esteem. It took me around middle school to realize that I shouldn't call myself stupid, and I was in that certain math class because I was stupid, because my friends in that same class aren't stupid. Now that I'm older, I've gotten better at redirecting my negative thoughts and being kind to myself. This isn't necessarily because of the parents. We are constantly trying to repair my 9-year-old son's self-esteem because he went to a school for a year where he was terribly bullied and treated unfairly by both the kids and the teachers. He was a bit of a loner, and he was physically and verbally attacked by other kids multiple times while the teachers turned a blind eye. We transferred him out of that school, but the road to recovery with self-confidence is a long and difficult road. These kids don't need everyone in their lives beating them down. Just a few select people at an integral time on their lives can do so much damage. This could also be the result of hearing other people speak negatively about themselves. My son is nearly 4 with an advanced vocabulary and speech. About a year ago, I noticed that anytime he tried and failed to do something, or did anything poorly in his eyes, he would say things like, "I'm just bad at everything," or "I did not do a good job," and it broke my heart. My husband gently told me that I was often speaking negatively about myself, from saying the dinner I cooked wasn't very good to saying my drawings aren't very good while doing art with my son. I wasn't even really aware of it, despite doing a lot of work to battle my own insecurities. I made some big changes, and now my son doesn't speak about himself in that way. I don't think I'm a bad parent because of those mistakes. Story 4. Attaches themselves very quickly and inappropriately to any adult who gives them attention and kindness. My neighbors have 2 kids. The parents own a restaurant and are never home. The kids are always with a sitter who just sits on her phone the whole time while the kids roam around feral. The daughter is pretty normal, but she's desperate for any attention. If I'm outside doing something and she sees me, she instantly comes over. It's to the point where I check if they're home before I start projects. They also have a son who has a lot of behavior issues. I'm pretty sure he frequently gets suspended from school because I see him a lot on school days, and the sitter is there, but no other kids are in the neighborhood. He's even more desperate for attention, and I'm pretty sure that's the root of most of his behavior issues. He'll come over and play with our kids and be pretty well behaved, but then if we ask him to leave, he's out in the streets trying to throw bricks at passing cars. I feel really bad for the kids, but it's impossible to deal with someone that's not their parent. It's inevitably a progression to boundaries being crossed no matter what you say or how you handle it. I can't think of a single time they've played with my kids that I didn't end up having to end because they just refused to listen to something I told them not to do. When I was a junior camp counselor, we had a younger male student who was placed with one of the older groups. Kids older than 10 were separated by gender. He was in kindergarten. Turns out he was rejected by his mother, and any woman who would have been even slightly kind to him would immediately become his new fixation. He would follow them around, referring to them as mommy, and always had to be physically touching them in some way. It would get to a point where he would become aggressive towards others if they approached whoever he was fixated on, and became extremely belligerent if she wasn't with him. Like if he had to leave for the day, he would refuse and throw a major tantrum. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I do know his father pulled him out towards the middle of summer. It's been 10 years since then, and I hope he's gotten the help he needs. Reading through the comments, this one I related to the most. I'm in my 40s and have been in a lot of therapy. They've pointed out various things that weren't very good about my childhood. For some reason, it hasn't really hit me. Your comment hit like a ton of bricks. I really had a crappy childhood. Any teacher who knew my name without looking at the list or asking how my day was immediately my favorite teacher. I have kids of my own that I'm trying to raise with love every day. I really didn't think I had a bad childhood. I wasn't malnourished or not clean, but I was just sort of paraded out when people came over, showed off my accomplishments as my parents were good at teaching me. They didn't go to soccer games or performances, so I eventually stopped asking them. I was treated with as much attention as the dogs. I do one-on-one intervention teaching with this one girl, and she latched onto me from day one and didn't want to go home. For the record, I am not the fluffy hugs and smiles teacher. I wish I was, but it's just not my style. Nonetheless, this girl is obsessed with me. All the other teachers got sick of her because she appeared to be lazy and unmotivated, and yeah, when you have a full class, those types of kids sadly get passed over a lot. She never smiles, never makes eye contact, and slumps in her chair. She's a first grader, so she is not really appealing as a student. Horrible to say, but you know, teachers are human. So when she comes to my room once a week and wants to stay all day and smiles and hugs me and wants to play with me, it kind of breaks my heart. This girl walked home alone the other day even though she was sick and had to leave early. We are in Asia, no laws about pickup and stuff. This has happened a few times to my wife and myself when we go on trips. One memorable time we went to the Wisconsin Dells, which we'll never go to again. Holy hell, what a tourist trap. And a little girl about 8 was following my wife, son, and me around the water park area talking our ears off. When we asked her where her parents were, she said something like, "I think they're upstairs at the bar." We felt so bad for her, but what can you do? The neglect was painful to see. This happened another time, maybe even more, but I can't remember the specific other example because it wasn't as drastic as the first. Story 5. They flinch or jump at the slightest movement. This one, I have to embarrassingly admit, was my own doing. At a young age, I decided I wanted to have good reflexes. So I figured if I practiced flinching and jumping at loud noises, it would jumpstart a reaction. Great job, kiddo. Now I'm everyone's favorite person to scare the crap out of. And I got the "did someone abuse you?" question every once in a while, and I had to assure people I was not physically abused growing up. During the pandemic, I felt sorry for a woman in my apartment building who had 2 toddlers and never went anywhere, so I offered to babysit while she went to the store. They were adorably sweet boys, but I went to hand the other one something and he flinched, putting his hands in the air to protect his face. I took a deep breath and said, "Oh no," out loud. I would eventually call authorities on the mother after I could hear her screaming at the kids and throwing what sounded like glass dishes. My dad's always affected by being jumpy. Anything loud happens and he jumps, but it's like a fraction of a second too slow to be a genuine reaction. He does it because he used to hang out with a bunch of bikers who'd reach for weapons if anything startled them, but he's never carried anything more deadly than a comb and still wanted to fit in. By the alternate turn, after growing up with my older brother, it took me a couple of years for my spouse to be able to safely shake me awake because I'd get 2 or 3 shots in before my eyes opened. I'm much better now, and I'm so glad for it. Waking up expecting a fight every day is freaking exhausting. Yes, but also be careful with this one because there can be other reasons for kids to be very easily startled. So this should be treated as a find out more, not a "this kid definitely has terrible parents." My own kid is an example. A teacher noticed that my oldest, who was 5 at the time, flinched at the smallest movement or the like in class, and surfaced it to the school. A bunch of appointments later, it turns out the issue was autism-associated sensory processing. They got so overwhelmed by the school sensory environment that they were super on edge and reactive. We never saw this behavior at home because they had quiet places to go when they got overwhelmed. I'm glad the teacher surfaced it so that we could find out early and get help, and that help came in the form of sensory supports, noise-reducing headphones, accommodation to have access to a quiet and low-light environment as needed, etc. Story 6. Another behavior I've noticed is the art of becoming invisible to the child who tries their best not to be noticed, whether it be at home or in the school environment. They're usually the ones who never raise their hand to answer questions, even though they may know the answer, and they seldom initiate or join conversations. This tendency is not because they're naturally introverted, but rather because being unnoticed is their coping mechanism. It's their way of avoiding negative attention or criticism at home, where standing out might not have the best outcomes. They become masters of blending into the background, often coming across as extremely independent when in reality it's a learned survival skill that's been ingrained from walking on eggshells around unpredictable caregivers. It's bittersweet when these patterns manifest because on the one hand they display a certain resilience, but on the other hand it becomes a barrier to forming healthy, transparent relationships where they feel safe to be seen and heard. This one hits hard. I am of the entirely unsubstantiated opinion that there is a series of behaviors that make a person forgettable, and I mastered the hell out of them. Subconsciously, more or less. I just slip right out of people's heads. When I wanted to avoid my family, I simply left the room. It wouldn't be until an hour later that someone would look around and wonder where I was. Now, I work to avoid things like that, useful when I was a kid but severely maladaptive as an adult who no longer has close ties to their family. I'm the same way, even when I try not to be forgettable. It seems I still am. I spent most of my childhood walking on eggshells with my parents and trying to avoid their anger/overbearing attention. There were no other distractions since I'm an only child. So it makes sense that I have so much trouble allowing myself to be seen or heard as an adult. Drawing attention to myself is an extremely uncomfortable feeling. I hate being ignored or overlooked, but when I notice people are attentively listening to me, it's almost just as painful. Pretty much me too, but what I will say is that it can so easily happen unbeknownst to the parent. My mother was a single parent, my father died when I was a kid, and she always wanted what was best for me, but what I think parents need to realize is how fine the line is between advice and control, i.e., telling your child what to do and basically forcing them to do it. I never got much of a say in anything, so in the end I stopped saying anything. Just smile, nod along, and keep my mouth shut, because 9 times out of 10 my opinion was wrong or stupid. It pissed me off and I got resentful. This was me as a kid. My teachers always had on my report card that they wished I would speak up more because I was very intelligent. Didn't put it together that I had an abusive parent who demanded perfection and children be seen, not heard. I had a college instructor comment once that I had mastered the fine art of invisibility because I was good at sneaking into the room without being noticed. I wished someone had noticed I was in a bad situation, but I would never ask for help or let on that anything was wrong. Not sure it would have amounted to anything anyway. Story 7. Afraid to make mistakes. They freeze or panic over small things like spilling a drink. My 10-year-old will call me panicking from her dad's house, my ex-husband, if she accidentally spills or breaks something. He is not at all abusive, but he treats mistakes as if the world is ending. At my house, she immediately starts apologizing profusely because of that, and I always gently remind her that mistakes happen and we can always fix them together. My 12-year-old son recently went to set down a bowl of cereal in a glass bowl. It knocked over and fell on the floor and broke. He was so upset and angry, came stomping in the kitchen. It fell over, all over the floor, everywhere. I said calmly, "That's okay, we can clean it up. Let's grab a paper towel, some towels, and the trash can. No big deal." His whole demeanor changed and he relaxed in seconds. I think he was preparing for me to be upset, but I've never gotten upset about accidents like that. I really feel for some kids who get screamed at or worse, physically hurt, over stupid stuff like a spill or broken glass. When I was 5 or 6, year 1, I forgot to hand in my lunch money check along with the rest of my class because we had a sub who didn't ask us for them. What kid remembers those things on their own at that age? Well, the afternoon comes and we get these pink slips to take home and I have a full-on panic. I'm begging this teacher's support to take the check now. Please just take it. She gets mad at me, tells me it's my own fault, and I had to deal with the consequences. What were they? Mom saw the note. I was pinned to a wall, shook, hit over and over and over, and she screamed in my face. When I told her it was an accident, she screamed nothing I ever did was an accident. I just did it to hurt her. It went on for so long before she kicked me out and told me to never come back. The only reason she let me back inside was that I hid behind the shed and the neighbor came out because I was crying so damn much. I was shell-shocked for days. Then on Monday I told my teacher, who told me I was making up lies for attention. I told another kid and I realized I shouldn't tell them those things after I saw the look on her face. Mom bought me a Barbie and told me I could have it if I kept my mouth shut. No one believed me anyway, so I took the doll. I wasn't allowed to make mistakes. I wasn't allowed to do anything wrong. I was barely allowed to be a normal kid at times. I was not a normal teen at all. I was a very, very well-behaved teen. Mom didn't think that though. Still got my ass kicked when I did absolutely nothing wrong. Story 8. I think being classified as an old soul can be an indicator. I was told a lot growing up how mature I was, and the reality was that I had to essentially grow up overnight, and was raising my little sister because my mom was strung out on drugs, but people didn't see that until a lot later. Looking back and remembering my teachers/other adults saying I was mature or an old soul stings now as an adult. I had a pretty good childhood overall, but had a severe anxiety disorder from age 4 to 5 and a crippling fear of ever being in trouble, so I acted maturely. I wish someone had caught it sooner. The anxiety ate away a lot of my life until I smartened up in my early 20s and got myself some therapy. Same, I got called that all the time and constantly asked what I was thinking about because I was very quiet. The reason I was quiet is because I had a very vivid fantasy life in my head that I would retreat to constantly. I had a crappy mother that I constantly had to reassure and walk on eggshells around, and a childhood illness that left me hospitalized for a while. I had to grow up and face the concept of mortality really early into my life without a decent support system because my mom was a mess and my dad walked out on us. People would get frustrated at me because I didn't want to make small talk during car rides to stuff I didn't want to be dealing with, like my frequent doctor visits. I just wanted to hang out in my head where life wasn't so crappy. This was me 100%. Grew up with an emotionally neglectful family. My mom was overwhelmed with myself and my brothers even while she was married, and by the time my parents divorced, she was buried in her depression and anxiety. I don't remember much of it, but as an adult, she admitted to me she didn't know what my brothers and I did for the time she couldn't get out of bed. I think being quiet, perceptive, and empathetic were ways that I could gauge what my mother was feeling so that I could emotionally caretaker her, or at least try not to trigger her into anger or depression. While those are great qualities, developing them and becoming an old soul through trauma was a miserable process. I spent most of my time either reading or vividly fantasizing about my own stories. I'd always be in my room alone, and honestly with my mother, I think it was a relief to her to have a child that never caused problems and was quiet, etc., because it freed her up to deal with my brothers who struggled with anger and ADHD. What most adults forget is when a child is quiet and doesn't act out, it doesn't mean they're okay. Story 9. As a teacher who has covered every grade level from TK to 12th, I find that younger children with abusive or neglectful parents emulate behaviors through really rough or aggressive roleplay. They only know what they have been shown. As children get older, I know something is off when I start hearing them talk about intimacy in a way that is a little too beyond the BS you hear when 5th or 9th grade kids lie about what they know. Story 10. The kid that can't attend anything outside of school hours. I'm not talking about the troublemakers either. I'm talking about grades overachievers who never get invited because everyone knows their parents will say no to the smallest inconveniences to their own plans, and their parents are highly discriminatory. The gentrified type with snobbish parents. That kid's entire life is being run by their parents, and they have to comply with their entire existence and support as their kid is questioned by them. 100% chance that the kid will severely lack social skills and become a recluse later in life. Don't ask me how I know. Why does this look like I wrote it? Constantly keep tabs on who and when I can talk to my schoolmates. Screaming in the background whenever there was a call, so I hurriedly cut the call. These parents don't have normal conversations. They interrogate, and you feel like a goddamn criminal. And you don't even know what you're guilty of. You are academically doing well, you have hobbies, you aren't doing shady things, and yet they're unhappy and pissed at you because it doesn't match their fantasy or whatever. All my classmates and their families are substandard lowlives, apparently, except for Mr. and Mrs. Holier Than Thou. As an adult, not having social experiences in childhood will result in being friends or being in relationships with incompatible people, and eventually have their trust broken so much that they'll give up. Then those same helicopter parents wonder why you aren't a social butterfly with a lovely spouse and 2 children by 30. I somehow managed to find someone as much as a recluse as I am and had kids. A massive mystery as to how I'm keeping him around. I'm incredibly antisocial, not in the violent sense, but easily distracted for hours with gaming. Lucky for me, he's also a gamer, and we often discuss a lot of gaming news and updates, game together, and have the same taste in almost everything. We're both pretty responsible as well. He came from a pretty tragic backstory as well, so we're both pretty thorough with bills, housework, and child rearing. I'm not a social butterfly at all, and I struggle with my incredibly social kids sometimes, but I force myself to take them to things, so there's a silver lining in having them in that they double up as exposure therapy. I also moderate their gaming sessions, so we've managed a way to help include them in something I do regularly anyway. My classmates were only ever comparison points to make comparisons about criminal activity, somehow aligning my ideologies with theirs. Cognitive distortions they liked playing on to make it seem like I deserved to be isolated, or to point out how much more successful a classmate was. It was never going to be about my individual successes, despite winning plenty of awards and often finishing top of my class, and they overplayed and assumed I was the type to end up in a teen pregnancy somehow. They'd often forget there was no way I could even talk to a boy if I was ever allowed out. Not to mention the inappropriate comments I would cop from my father once I hit puberty. Turns out they were thinly veiled omissions to an addiction he was struggling with. I think you can put 2 and 2 together on that one. Plainly put, my parents' view of the world as perverted was true because they were themselves perverted. Story 11. Lack of self-confidence, deeply rooted sentiment of insecurity and lack of affection. Obviously, there might be different disorders based on the context. It's a very broad and complex question. Furthermore, we should take time to get to know someone and not resort to hasty analyses. Like, oh, he is shy, he must have terrible parents. That might be part of his or her current personality and change during teenage years. Story 12. I'd say a huge red flag is when the kid looks genuinely terrified to make even the smallest mistake. If they're constantly apologizing for things that aren't their fault, that's a pretty bad sign. Another warning is if they go silent or tense up the second their parents walk into the room. If it feels like the kid is tiptoeing through life, it's worth paying attention. My sister-in-law is horrible and yells at her kids for every little thing. Her eldest, 12, is also the scapegoat. I invite her over a lot for sleepovers. One time, she dropped a toy on my foot, looked at me, panicked, and said, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I shrugged and said it was an accident. She asked if it hurt. I said, well, it wasn't fun, but I'm okay. I explained to her that we punish intentions in our house. I have a 4-year-old who is just learning to be human. Did she throw it down to hurt me? No. You could see her body get less tense and she wanted to cry. She once spilled a drink and my 4-year-old said, "It's okay, we just cleaned it up." She was having heart palpitations. Yes, this was me growing up. Childhood was a living hell. I was so relieved when I graduated and I could finally escape. I was told on graduation day by my second stepmother I had 4 days to get out, or my crap would be on the street. Inside, I was jumping for joy, but knew better than to show that. I was out in 2 days and spent the summer on a high of feeling free. I was so happy that I survived. Unfortunately, by the time summer ended, the weight of everything, surviving childhood and finally making it to freedom, came crashing down on me and I fell into a severe depression, to the point that I could barely function and was crying all the time. Story 13. The kid who genuinely eats school breakfasts and lunches with such fervor. He would also ask if he could take a snack or 2 home for his siblings. When I would meet with him, I had to reassure him many times that it was okay if he ate his bag of chips for himself, and I would give him another to take home. I would even tell him it would be okay if he ate those too. It broke my heart seeing him like that. Trust me, those school meals did not look good. Child welfare was called and has been involved, but there hasn't been much change. Story 14. At the middle school age, the tendency to shut down when they are corrected or receive a consequence at school is telling. A well-adjusted kid will get angry or upset with you, and some will even tell you what their parents will do if they find out, lose video games or phone or be grounded. They will also tell you not to call, and if you do, they will come in the next day mad at you, and will usually tell you their consequences at home. Think, "My mama yelled at me last night because of you." A kid with abusive or overly harsh parents will kinda just turn off and make themselves small. They don't bargain with you about calling home, and a lot of times they don't show up the next day. I rarely call home if I see that reaction, only if it's a situation where I am told I have to, like failing grades or something. I had a great assistant principal in middle school who was an old school lady, and one day I got in trouble for doing some dumb kid crap, hiding a water bottle under a bookshelf, got sat down in her office, and was told that I'd be getting an in-school suspension and a call home. And then she started crying because I didn't say anything, but I looked terrified. I didn't have any issues in middle school after that day and had a bunch more discipline issues, but Mrs. D treated me like a person instead of a stupid kid. It's rough to just type this up. She died of cervical cancer in 2014. She was only retired for 4 years. I bet she helped so many kids be more comfortable with themselves.
What activity is socially accepted but actually is borderline psychotic? The compulsion to put absolutely everything you do and experience on social media for people to enjoy, when really you're hoping that they'll envy you. What's worse is when oversharers have kids, and they post photos of every single thing that their children do with little to no regard for their privacy. Yes, that crap bugs me the most. Like, I'm glad your 6-year-old gave himself a bath, but I really don't need to see pictures of it along with a billion hashtags. Hyper-aggressive and infighting behavior in a management role. It's so counterproductive too. Once fear and politics kick in, people stop warning or helping each other. Suddenly, projects start being late and lower quality because people are too scared or bitter to mention delays or get help for something that they're struggling with. My office is going to hell in a handbasket because of this. One manager in particular is a useless tit, but she uses her power to bully people into submission. Always passes the buck when something goes wrong too. I have reported her to HR close to a dozen times for her abusive behavior, and I know she has had to take a sensitivity course. The rest of the upper management is almost just as bad. Can't wait to get out. Parents not preparing their children for adult life to keep them from moving out. This one boggles my mind. No, Jimmy doesn't need to prepare for med school while he's in elementary, but holy crap, they can start learning appropriate levels of responsibility, like picking up after themselves and putting their shoes and coats away when they come in the house, bringing dishes to the sink and putting them in the dishwasher. When I was teaching in daycares out of school care, man, so many of the kids couldn't understand that cleaning up in between activities was also for them, not just someone else's job. It took a few weeks, and then they picked up the routine. But the transition for a few was just pulling teeth. I think allowing them to have a more independent social life as they get older is also important too. The fact you have to fork out up to $10K for a proper funeral. Somebody just went through a traumatic loss and now they have to set up this crap? Come on. I'd rather be cremated and dumped into the bay. Becoming a burden is awful. When I'm dead, just throw me in the trash. Instagram influencers who have hundreds of thousands of followers who are literally filming everything they do or think. You can tell the people they spend time with are uncomfortable with the constant filming, yet they still do it. Not socially aware or just don't care? And it's because people keep watching, viewing, living life through someone else's camera, and everyone is completely okay with it. Checking people's online status, last active, last seen across various social media frequently. Technology is an incredible thing, and there is no denying that social media brings us closer to those that are physically further away. But I believe the ability to digitally stalk people plays a major role in social anxiety and psychotic behavior today. People who are obsessed with celebrities to the point of following their every move and talking about it with friends. I like to believe that you are an anonymous celebrity and this is your moment of reprieve. Jealous couples who keep tabs on each other's every move, shared Facebook account, check-in by text every 5 minutes, dirty looks when somebody attractive walks by, etc. Seriously, if there's so little trust, why even be together? Shared Facebook accounts creep me out. Am I speaking with Jimmy or Jane? Can I crack a joke, or will they go insane? Facebook pages for uteri also creep me out. I wasn't allowed to get Facebook because my dad told me they were just going to steal and sell my info. Way to call it, Daddy-o. But at 15, I rebelled and made one at my friend's house. So like, when the baby is born, do they inherit the account? How do they explain to their friends that their Facebook account is older than they are? Why don't the parents just post the pictures to their own page like a regular person who's waiting to meet a little person they made? It doesn't make sense at all to me. The beginning of your comment sounds like the start of some super crazy slam poetry or something. Competitive dog breeding, or what's it called? People are obsessed with dog breeds' appearances that prioritize aesthetics before health concerns. Just look at the Schaefer with its hind legs, or pugs who can barely breathe. And not to forget all the other dog breeds with an endless list of health problems. Vets are campaigning to end the breeding of snub-snouted dogs. They can take up an OR for a whole week in some surgeries. Advertisements for prescription medication in the US. If you're going to a doctor for a problem, why not let the doctor suggest medication if you need one? I mean, the advertisement isn't even aimed at selling the product directly. It's telling you to ask your doctor about it. Why would I want to influence my doctor in a medication choice? They're the ones who went to school for it, not me. Absolutely. The pharmacy industry is crazy. I'm very scared of them, in general. It was one of the things I wasn't expecting about US TV when I first visited. We advertise over-the-counter stuff, but no prescription medicines in the UK. Putting the entire timeline and life of your child on Facebook while they grow up and have no control over parents posting everything about them. My mom does this with my kid's sister. It's kind of unsettling. She's had her own Facebook account since she was born, and yet my mom doesn't have an account because she doesn't want people from high school contacting her and doesn't want people knowing her business. It's the most hypocritical crap I've ever heard. My mom doesn't have a real Facebook. Because of that, she made one as my old, now past, RIP, cat years and years ago, and now posts as herself but with my cat's name. Honestly, I think it's hilarious that my mom has a weeb-like Facebook account. The way we treat people on the internet. The complete and utter lack of empathy plus lack of remorse is a psychopathic trait. I hope this gets higher up in the comments section. Most of us would never treat people in person the way we do online. Of course, there are psychological reasons for that. We evolved to interact in person, and empathy is partly dependent on it. But it only takes a few seconds to take some deep breaths and remember there are real people behind these usernames. I'm not excluding myself from this, to be clear. I've made a concerted effort over the last 2 years to take those breaths, and I think I've done a really good job, but I still fail on occasion. I try to talk to people on here like I would in real life, but sometimes it is just hard. I can just go there and tell someone that they're a stale ham sandwich, and it only takes me around 5 seconds to do it, but then I'll be insulting a person right to their face. People think releasing an unwanted pet into the wild is okay. My ex and his family did this. They had a red heeler that they said was useless on the farm, so they drove him off into the rural area, kicked him out and laughed as he tried to chase after them while they drove away. He's a domesticated dog. He will die a slow, horrible death from starvation. I still get so upset even now. I never forgave them for what they did. Also, saw a video a while back of a lady that lived near a spot where people commonly dumped dogs. A few people kicked the dogs as they tried to get back into their cars. Some dogs chased after their owners' cars and got hit by another car. Some dogs stayed in the same spot waiting for their owners to come back and slowly starved to death. I'm 100% with you, but I am glad to say that this is no way socially accepted where I live. We have almost no strays anywhere, and all the people I know treat their pets properly, for the most part. We have no strays around where I live because my mom takes them all in, LOL. If she finds a cat, she feeds it and such and tries to find the owner. If she can't, then she will clean the cat up and take it to the vet to get fixed and get shots. She has kept a couple of them, but usually she finds them new homes. She is a teacher, so usually there is another teacher or a kid and their family that wants the kitty. Workaholism. Taking pride in working 22 hours a day and getting 30 minutes of sleep seems really insane to me. I can understand wanting to make a comfortable living and being passionate about what you do for work, but when you can't turn it off and relax, it shouldn't be worth celebrating. Source. Just got out of a relationship with a workaholic, and I am so much happier. Sometimes it's not the paycheck or better job you're after. It's just a good distraction from the rest of a crappy life. My old boss was the hardest worker I've ever seen. The first one in the office and the last one out. Was super friendly, and you can tell she really cared about the company and her team. She killed herself out of the blue this year. Breeding and selectively engineering dogs to make them cuter and smaller. It's really weird when you think that people have done this to create dogs that are small enough to fit in your hand or just look like a teddy bear. It's like borderline mad scientist behavior, especially when you consider that many of these dogs have health problems because of the way they are. Mediums or psychics, who basically make a living preying on vulnerable people who have probably recently lost someone they loved dearly. So much they believe some arsehole who can't wait to cash in on it. Ah yes, your husband is definitely here, but to hear what he wants to say, I'd like $25. Houdini made it his life goal to defrock all mediums after the death of his wife. He told her a secret phrase that only they knew, and the mediums would never say the phrase. His hatred stemmed from them preying on weak people and giving them false hope. Houdini would then do the mediums' routines at magic shows to mock them and make money. He was a great dude. Magicians have a long, proud history of debunking frauds. After all, who better than a magician to know the tricks that fool gullible minds? Being interviewed for just a bit higher than minimum wage jobs and there being 4 interviewers on the panel. I mean, you're trying to see if this person will be the best fit in your company, so you make them tell you about all of their achievements whilst being scrutinized by 4 people, and then not giving them the job if they're so nervous they miss out on vital info. What interested you in the vacant position? A paycheck? Most of the time that's the reason, but I don't think anyone actually says this. Instead, you have to think of some bullcrap about the challenge or some other nonsense. I'm a big fan of money. I like it, I use it, I have a little. I keep it in a jar on top of my refrigerator. I'd like to put more in that jar. That's where you come in. Spending $20K plus on a wedding. I'd rather people pony up $20K plus so I and the bride can go on a 1-month-long honeymoon to anywhere in the world rather than rent a mansion for a few hours so I can feed a couple of hundred people. I definitely know what you mean, but the way you worded me and the bride sounds kind of like you're not her spouse and are just going to take her off somewhere just after she was married to another man. Made me chuckle. Dudes in those wingsuits that glide really close to mountains, a lot of them are dead. Doing a good deed, then posting online what a good deed you did so that others can praise you as being a wonderful person. They may be doing it for the wrong reason, but at least it is being done. I doubt those types of people would be doing good things at all if they couldn't show it off. I mean, headbanging is kind of odd if you think about it too much. Work in general, even a basic 9 to 5, spending your time doing something you don't like so that you can live, is crazy. I think just reducing working hours would do wonders for the general population. It's so frustrating to complete your work in 5 hours and do nothing for 3. Can I have your job? At any given point in my working week, I have more work that can be accomplished in a week. Even if I did a crappy rush job of it, I also just had a week's holiday, which means I now have a whole week's worth of work to catch up on, as well as the stuff that was already on my desk before I left. Healthcare profiteering. Yes, money is needed to develop treatments and garner people's best efforts. My issue is with greed, fraud, and corruption, keeping costs astronomical for something many argue should be a fundamental right. And prison profiteering. Having your dogs in small, cramped urban apartments and getting them a script for their anxiety. I'm going to add on people who get dogs as practice for having children. Then after the children are born, ignore the dog. The same type of people. My husband and I recently adopted a dog. When we were looking at shelters, rescues, I was absolutely astounded by the number of dogs that had been given up because the family had a kid. The description always read like this too. Sweetest, best dog ever, but we just had a baby and don't have time for them anymore. We are so devastated to give them away. What the actual heck? If your dog is so goddamn amazing, then why the heck are you dumping it at a shelter? My heart was shattered seeing it over and over. Playing king games like Candy Crush endlessly. My mother's on the last level, 3,000? My parents are around 2,000 on the original and the soda version. They take turns in playing the levels and call me lazy and laid back for occasionally playing PUBG Mobile. Getting involved in strangers' lives as if they were your own. If a guy likes to dress that way, let him. If a girl likes to date girls, let her. If a person believes in the devil, let him. The only time it affects you is if said person is harming you or others. Being uncomfortable doesn't count. Unfortunately, some have this belief, but their ideas of harming you or others is very much more petty. Denying someone healthcare because of a technicality in how they filed insurance. Had to pay an extra $2K on treatment for a broken arm because I didn't get a referral from my insurance company before seeking primary care. I don't understand. This provider is in your network of referred providers. Can't you create a retroactive referral? Sorry, sir, there's literally nothing we can do. Really? There's nothing you can do just because I sought treatment before confirming the details with your money-grubbing asswipe company? Crap should be illegal. This is going to be downvoted, but people seeing visions of God is psychotic and in a mental institution would mean that you wouldn't be released, but is often commonly accepted within religious societies. See also speaking in tongues. I saw some guy go into that crap and I just barely stopped myself from dying laughing. My sister's mom once yelled at me because she got into the car and started talking with my sister about her friend who would speak in tongues in church. So she makes noises during the service? Seems rude. It's the Spirit of God in her, it's not rude. The Lord is speaking through her. Well, he needs a dictionary. You think you're so clever. You think you're always right, but you don't know anything. I know making noises and faking a seizure isn't speaking to God. Social media in general. Sharing your everyday activities with the whole world is crazy, but people do it. The culture praises over-drinking and silly wasted stories. We went out for coffee and then I woke up in my bed with the bartender covered in fries. Isn't proof of how silly and crazy you are, it just proves that you have poor impulse control and an alcohol problem. I drink socially as well, but really taking too many shots and not remembering how you came home or what happened during the night isn't something to be proud of. I think it's a coping mechanism for people. Being so invested in a group of people kicking a ball around that when they don't kick the ball around as well as another group of people, you get upset and may even beat people up and smash up other people's property. I'm not sure beating people up and smashing other people's property is socially acceptable though. Agree with this. I'm definitely a sports fan, but I have certain friends that I won't invite over or go to their place to watch a game because it's way too risky not knowing what will happen if their team doesn't win. Being a fan is socially acceptable. Acting like an idiot if your team doesn't win isn't really. Electing someone to the position of power who has zero experience in their job, no mental check, no education, not even from the town they're representing, and known history of being crazy. Group interviews, especially when they don't tell you it's going to be a group interview. I just don't understand why. I can see it working with certain jobs, but I once went to an interview for a normal office position and there were about 15 other people interviewing for the same job. It was an entry-level position paying minimum wage. About 10 people left almost immediately after the interview started. It's the result of lazy, incompetent administrators minimizing their time in the hiring process at the cost of not actually knowing the candidates. It's also a sort of power play on the organization's part. I work with multinational companies on their hiring, and no company worth their salt does group interviews for any position that's higher than a fresh graduate. To any of us with options, a group interview is a huge warning sign that the company doesn't treat people well and is overburdened by useless bureaucrats. Usually HR, but that's not to say all HR are bad. Repeatedly taking selfies and videos of oneself while out in public or out with friends. Maybe not psychotic, but it's vain to the point of extreme narcissism, and the number of people who don't see anything wrong with it or defend such behavior is disturbing. Paying your employees as little as possible and turning against or banishing anyone who questions it or tries to improve things for themselves. Screw you for trying to get by in this world, am I right? Why can't I just pay you what I want to pay you and you can be loyal forever? Or punishing or firing employees for discussing wages. The only entity forbidding wage discussion benefits is an abusive employer. One employer I know still refuses to post rates on job listings online because they know the rates are substandard. Thankfully, more and more listing sites are refusing to list ads that neglect to mention rate or wage. Pretending to speak really loudly to your children in public when you are actually using your children because you are desperate to be the center of attention yourself. I didn't know that was a thing. Reacting to situations with aggression and violence seems to be something that shouldn't exist in 2018, but it's ridiculous how many people, primarily men, but some women, instantly turn aggressive when faced with a minor altercation. An example might be if you accidentally cut someone off in traffic, and before you can apologize to them at the next set of lights, they are already red-faced and yelling like it was done on purpose. Or the way you are risking your own well-being if you decide to confront a stranger about their poor behavior in public, because most people take constructive criticism as an instant desire to want to fight. Obsession over kids' sports. Ever seen a grown adult scream at a 14-year-old referee because they disagreed about a call? Chill out, man. Thousands of people who make significantly less than a celebrity donate money so they can make $1 billion, rather than donate time, money, or other resources to organizations that try to help people who actually need it. Cutting sandwiches into rectangles. It's the only way to make two truly equal sandwiches. Cut it diagonally and one half will have a disproportionate amount of bottom crust and not nearly enough top crust. Cutting the sandwich into a top and bottom half is also out of the question for the same reason. Cutting the sandwich into two pieces of bread with toppings on both is straight lunacy. Cutting straight down the middle is the only true way. And don't even get me started on the madness of folding bread to make an abomination of sandwiches. Diagonal cuts make sandwiches taste at least 15% better. Eating junk food and soft drinks constantly. We know it's bad for us, but we keep doing it. Having to pay for university to get a degree, but needing a degree to get a good-paying job. Clipping dogs' ears, docking their tails, and declawing cats. Yeah, let's mutilate our new family member and hope they don't hold a grudge against us for the rest of their lives, because it makes them look better and keeps them from damaging my furniture. People brag about the value of their belongings. Clothes, cars, in person, as well as on the internet. The fact that some people are actually impressed by it is absolutely repelling in my opinion. Publicly complaining to get free stuff. The customer is always right philosophy is ridiculous and needs to go. Taking pictures or videos of everything so you don't forget it, but you end up spending the bulk of your time trying to get the best picture of it instead of experiencing it. Had this discussion just the other day. I asked if we were finally done with pictures after the 1000th one. I was told, we're making memories. I said, no, we're just taking pictures. Making memories means experiencing them. Look around, smell the scents, hear the sounds, and look at the pretty things. Advertisements on the TV for prescription medications. Let us help you get back to the life you enjoy living. Possible side effects of consuming this allergy medication are internal bleeding, suicidal thoughts and actions, significant appetite decrease to the point of malnourishment, a strong desire to abandon everyone you love, and eye spasms. People who get animals they can't fully care for. It's pretty accepted in society considering how many people treat and see pets as second-class citizens. I have a roommate who got a purebred husky puppy. This dude is lazy, immature, and often works long days. He hardly plays with her, never walks her, and I doubt she eats enough either. He will see her scratch at the door to pee and keep gaming for so long that she pees on the floor because he's almost done. Yesterday he worked a 12-hour day so that puppy got to sit in her small cage for 12 hours, only to go back in a few hours later because he didn't feel like dealing with how energetic she was. Pets are your family, and you are theirs. You're their whole world. Treat them like it. Guys bothering women on the street. Yelling, making random noises to make her jump in surprise, then laughing when she does. Literally scaring strangers and making them feel unsafe for their own pleasure. I've never seen a group of women do this to a man. A guy was sitting in his car in a parking lot, revving the hell out of his engine. So I did the only natural and appropriate response. "Yes, Daddy!" I shouted to him. He immediately stops revving his car and looks around, hoping his car's loud noises had attracted a mate. I and my friends were just sitting in our truck laughing our asses off at this guy. This was all in a fast food parking lot, a very small one. We were right behind him, just a truck full of guys tired of hearing his loud-ass car. Thanks for watching. What medical condition do you have that you thought was absolutely normal? Eosinophilic esophagitis. I would get stuff stuck in my throat all the time, and I just figured, throats are narrow, take smaller bites. Turns out, no. My esophagus is much, much narrower than normal, and most people don't choke every time they eat. When I said choke, I didn't mean it in the normal sense of the word, since food is not getting stuck in my airway. It is getting stuck in my esophagus. I can still breathe when this happens. I just figured choke was a more recognizable word than impaction or blockage. And no, I am not the guy who gave myself the Heimlich twice, since the food is not stuck in the airway, and therefore the Heimlich would be much worse than useless. I thought your throat, mouth, and lips were supposed to hurt after eating fruits like apples and pears. Nope, just allergic. This is how I felt about cookies with tree nuts in them. I just thought the nuts would scratch your throat too much to make it itchy. Didn't understand why people love tree nuts so much. If you also have seasonal allergies, I would highly recommend going to an allergist. In my case, I had bad seasonal allergies, and most fruits, vegetables, and nuts would make my throat really itchy for an hour or two. Apparently my body thought something in the food looked like the seasonal stuff I'm allergic to. Getting allergy shots completely cured both my seasonal allergies and all my food allergies that I've tested so far. I hear it is less common to cure the food allergy as opposed to seasonal allergies though, so don't get your hopes up just yet. However, it worked for me and was the biggest upgrade to my life I've ever gotten. Feel free to PM me if you want more info. My sense of smell is rated 1 out of 5. 5 being normal. I always thought everyone was exaggerating the smells of flowers or stinky messes. And I feel like mine is a 6+ out of 5 then. I was always the family dog in terms of finding the source of smells, and some smells actually irritate me, from dry throat to bad headache. I have an insanely sensitive sense of smell, so I know where you're coming from. Lots of things give me headaches. It was dialed up to 11 when I was pregnant. Cataplexy. It's the hallmark symptom of narcolepsy, but most people don't know it actually has a large range of presentations. I remember talking about a YouTube video to my friend and describing it as one of those super funny ones that make your face stop working. Apparently, I didn't realize it wasn't normal to have your face droop and your head become too heavy to hold up if you laugh too hard. After being diagnosed with narcolepsy, I began to notice a few other things. Constantly dropping things wasn't just me being clumsy. Going completely limp on amusement park rides and slurring my words whenever I laughed wasn't normal either. TLDR? I turn into human jello every time I laugh or get excited about something and thought it was completely normal. I am so sorry for laughing, but the way you worded this was humorous and made the situation much more lighthearted. I'm really happy you got answers, and I hope things have gotten better. No need to be sorry. I'm glad I was able to make you laugh. There's nothing wrong with bringing a bit of sunshine into the world. I'm glad I got answers as well. Luckily, cataplexy is, for me, a minor annoyance at most, and while it may never get better, it's not very hard to deal with now. I have always felt cold. Not normal, oh, it's cold out cold, but holy crap, I am freezing cold. I thought some people just handled the cold better than others. Turns out it is one of the symptoms of severe anemia. Thanks to iron infusions every 3 months, I still feel cold, but not the I think I may be freezing to death cold. Oh, I should probably have a chat with my doctor. Please do. Feeling cold isn't normal. Lupus. My doctor always told me that the constant pain and fatigue were just part of growing up. Then they said the pain in my chest and shortness of breath was anxiety, and I was just fishing for attention. Surprise! I was short of breath because lupus made the lining of my lungs swell and made my heart enlarge when I was having an outbreak. 10 years later, it's finally under control. Thanks to one doctor who told me being tired and in pain every minute of every day was not normal. It's never lupus. After 4 biopsies and several trips to the Mayo Clinic in the last 3 months for a suspected lymphoma, it is actually lupus. Should have gone to Dr. House first. I have prosopagnosia. I don't easily recognize people by looking at their faces. I figure out who you are by your profile, hairstyle, voice, walk, and sometimes just guessing from context or what you're talking about. For half my life, I had no idea I wasn't normal. You know the cop shows on TV where they walk into a bar and show a photo to the bartender? Has this guy been in here this week? I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking it was totally ridiculous. No frickin' way could anyone recognize someone they don't know from a picture. My husband and I were at Walmart, and a man approached asking how I'm doing, etc. I did my usual make small talk while figuring out who this is thing, but no joy. I didn't know who he was. After he walked away, I asked my husband, I wonder who that was. My husband said, that was the guy you were dating when I met you. Oh, guess he wasn't too special, huh? Now that I've been diagnosed, everything makes a lot more sense. I have this. It makes watching movies really hard because I don't know who anyone is. By the time I can memorize some mannerisms to remember them by, the movie is over. I've had coworkers who I've known for years trying to talk to me in stores, and I have no idea who they are when they are dressed differently from their work clothes. Yep, I hate it when several of the main characters in a movie all have the same hair. It seems so obvious to me that nobody will be able to tell them apart that I have to remind myself that I'm the one with the problem, not Hollywood. I thought the dryness of my eyes was really normal until I found out that part of the reason they get dry so easily is that they don't close all the way. That must have been an eye-opening experience. I'll show myself out. Tinnitus, ringing in the ears. When I was retiring from the military, the VA doc asked me if I had ringing in my ears. I said all the time, but I don't think it's more than anybody else. He gave me a weird look and said ringing in the ears is not normal. I thought it was because most people I know have ringing in their ears. I can't imagine not having tinnitus. Do people without it literally hear nothing when it's quiet? I can't wrap my head around not hearing a ring. IBS. I thought everybody had diarrhea every day. Same. Imagine how shocked I was when I found out other people don't constantly switch back and forth between constipation and diarrhea. Wild. One testicle. I had no clue it wasn't normal growing up. Undescended as a child, then it herniated and died. My body absorbed it, apparently. Didn't find out it wasn't normal until I was getting a physical, by a doctor who tried to find it but couldn't, in the 6th grade. Just make sure you always mention it in your past medical history when visiting doctors, because there is an increased risk of testicular cancer later in life with this condition. Cryptorchidism. Feeling like a stranger in my body, like I was pushed way back within my own head and perceiving the world as if I was looking through a cinema screen, with the deep conviction that the world around me was fictional. Happened quite a lot, but I figured it was normal. It wasn't. It's schizophrenia. I get that occasionally, thankfully not a lot. That's depersonalization episodes. If you feel your own perception is foreign and removed from yourself, it can be nothing, but if you do get them, maybe seeing doctors about it is the wisest thing to do. I have always had ringing in my ears for as long as I remember, and I thought everybody experienced it. I'd heard of tinnitus plenty of times, but for some reason, it was a while until the penny dropped. I've never heard complete silence because of the noise. I always thought silence was the ringing in my ears. Does yours get louder the quieter the background sounds are? I wouldn't say louder, but rather more obvious. I can ignore the ringing if I'm doing something like watching TV or talking to somebody, but when there's little to no sound, it becomes much more obvious to me. When I'm lying in bed, it seems very loud and often keeps me awake, but I'm pretty sure it's the same volume at all times. I just notice it less during the day because there's usually a lot more going on around me. I have ventricular tachycardia. Basically, my heart has an extra spark plug, and without medication, it beats about twice as fast as it should. I first noticed it in high school and thought, I'm not sure if my heart should be beating this fast, but I was an idiot and did nothing about it. I didn't feel any symptoms, so I thought I was fine. Then one day I felt really short of breath going up a flight of stairs and almost passed out, so my dad rushed me to the ER. When we arrived and the EKG results came in, the staff absolutely flipped out and sprinted the crash cart into my room. That was the most terrified I've ever been. I should probably be dead. If you think something is going on with your heart, get it looked at immediately. Mine is only triggered by stimulants, so I thought it was normal to have a 200+ heart rate after drinking coffee. No, it's not normal. Ectopic focus in my left ventricle. No coffee or Red Bull for me. That sucks. I was initially told no caffeine when I had symptoms, but after being diagnosed, they told me that wasn't the problem. The cardiologist said I could do whatever I wanted except cocaine. I'm not sure if it's a medical condition per se, but my second and third toes are fused together on both feet. My brother has this as well, and my mom too, just a little bit. I grew up thinking everyone had connected toes until one spring in middle school when everyone was wearing sandals. I literally shouted out in class, "You guys don't have connected toes?" And everyone looked at me like I was insane. Everyone's toes are webbed in the womb, but the cells in between the toes die at some point and were born without them being webbed. Not really a medical condition, but last time I was at a dentist, turns out I have no canine teeth, so I pretty much would be screwed if I were a vampire. I had an extra canine between my upper two front teeth, had it taken out and got braces for about a year to pull them next to each other. You should have lent it to OP. For some time now, I would sometimes, like once every several months or so, yawn large enough that my jaw sort of gets stuck open. It always corrects itself within a few minutes, with a distinct feeling that the jaw was slipping back into place. Didn't think anything of it, just thought it was something that happens when you open your mouth that wide. Then it happened a few days ago while I was in the same room as my mother, a doctor. Turns out that no, this is not normal behavior for someone's jaw. It's something called temporomandibular joint dysfunction, or TMJ. Still doesn't seem like an incredibly pressing thing, but I'll certainly bring it up the next time I see my dentist. Your jaw slipping out isn't really enough to call it TMJ by itself. It's normally accompanied by clicking, crunching, jaw aches and pains, and headaches. It sucks. Gah, the clicking. It's almost constant when I talk, and I had a boyfriend in high school break up with me because it freaked him out that my jaw clicked whenever we made out. Precordial catch syndrome. Random stabbing chest pains and an inability to breathe for about 20 seconds, then just disappears. I thought it happened to everyone. Apparently the membrane around your heart gets caught in your lung. Then it has to detach itself. Totally harmless. I think I'm dying every time. I hate this. It's just like a little bubble that needs to pop. I think if I breathe deep enough it will pop, but I can't breathe that hard because it hurts so bad. Yes, you can only take these shallow little breaths, and I always start panicking that I'll never breathe properly again. And it hurts so much, like someone is piercing you in the heart with a long needle. I have OCD and did not get diagnosed until I was well into my adulthood. My understanding of OCD was based on pop culture, so I had no idea that that's what my intrusive thought and compulsions were. I am learning that things are abnormal all the time now. I relate to this. OCD is like having an abusive brain. Abusive brain? I have hyperhidrosis. I didn't realize how much I sweat was abnormal enough to be a medical condition. It was miserable growing up and having sweat literally drip from your hands while you tried to write and not understanding why. I scrolled down so far to find this because I have that too and I thought the same thing. Same. I also have it. With, in, on, my feet. My boyfriend finds it weird that I always wear socks. I have a Skotsky ring, a narrowing of the lower esophagus, which means I have to drink a lot of water with anything I eat to get it down, especially dry foods like bread. Otherwise, food gets stuck in my esophagus and I end up in a lot of pain. Once when I was maybe 11 or 12, I watched a man eat an entire bagel without drinking anything, and I was shocked. You can get that dilated. I ended up in the ER thanks to some steak getting lodged in mine. They popped the steak into my stomach and dilated the ring so the food doesn't get stuck anymore. I still won't eat without having a drink to wash it down though. Force of habit. I understand the dilating usually doesn't last very long though. If I chew very thoroughly and drink lots of liquids, I can usually avoid any real emergencies, but I do usually have 5 to 6 hard swallows every meal. Maybe once every couple of weeks I'll take a gulp of water to push something down and it won't work, and then I start aspirating until I can get to the restroom and spit the water out. I just don't think it's serious enough yet for me to need to go to the doctor for it. I thought every woman had searing, stabbing pains in their pelvis all the time due to woman problems, and I was just being a little punk. No, I have endometriosis. My organs were fused together. Yeah, took me forever to figure this one out. The correlated intestinal problems and random stabs in the not lady parts didn't help making this clearer. Endo is annoying. Daytime idiopathic hypersomnia. Basically during the day I'm sleepy regardless of how much I sleep and they don't know why. I also fell asleep and entered REM sleep in 7 seconds during the daytime sleep study, which I'm told you aren't supposed to do. Are you also sleepy at night? Sometimes. I also have occasional insomnia, but when I did the sleep study, they did a nighttime one where I slept through fine, followed by the day one where I had to try and sleep 20 minutes out of every 2 hours for 10 hours. They told me most people don't sleep at all during the day study if they slept through the night study, or if they do, it's very little and they fall asleep during the last 20 minutes. I could barely stay awake between the times I wasn't supposed to sleep, and then slept most of the 20 minutes. It was during one of those 20-minute designated sleep times I fell asleep and entered REM state for 7 seconds after they told me to try and sleep. Bipolar disorder. I figured everybody thought about killing themselves from time to time, and anytime anything went wrong. This impression was strengthened when going on an antidepressant helped, but didn't make it go away entirely. Things are different now that I'm on a mood stabilizer. I started taking medication for bipolar disorder 9 months ago, and haven't wanted to die for like 7 months now. I'm just totally fine with being alive, and it's kind of amazing. Exploding head syndrome. For years now, sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I'll hear a sound similar to a car crash in my head. In the beginning, I convinced myself that I had just imagined hearing it, and it became normal when I stumbled across an article about it and realized that it actually was. It's only happened to me twice, but it was scary as frick. Insomnia and sleep deprivation. I always just thought people stay up late as they get older till around high school when friends would go to bed and be asleep by 10 p.m. Same here. I used to think that everyone would lay in bed for 2 to 3 hours before being able to get to sleep. I have ADHD and a speech impediment. During my schooling, I thought I was just an idiot when it came to learning and talking. Right before I graduated, I told my mom that I hate how stupid I am. Then she told me that I was diagnosed as a child and should have gotten treatment, and went into some kind of special ed class to help me out. She didn't want people to think I was sick, so she never went along with it. Thanks, Mom. Shame on your mother. How is sweeping something under the rug ever helpful? Especially when there's an actual way to help a situation. I think she just didn't want people to think less of me when they learned I was in special ed. Would have been nice knowing, though. I beat myself up for my condition without even knowing that it wasn't my fault. I wish she would have told the teachers at least. They were the meanest. I thought the bloating and urge to crap your pants was a normal trade-off for eating dairy, like how some peppers can be painfully spicy until an ex of mine pointed out that I was probably lactose intolerant. The doctor confirmed it and told me to stay the hell away from cheese. I was 18. To be fair, I had mentioned it several times to my mom growing up, who is also lactose intolerant but still eats dairy and suffers through it, and she just assumed I knew what lactose intolerance was and brushed it off as something else. I was homeschooled though, so not sure where else she'd assume I'd learned that. I didn't find out I was lactose intolerant till the mid-20s when I was posted to Hong Kong, where dairy is hardly eaten. Dairy just naturally dropped from my diet, and then I suddenly realized I had stopped having diarrhea every 2 days and felt the best I ever felt in my life. Until then, I felt like constant diarrhea, spots of blood on toilet paper, and chronic fatigue were just how everyone had it. That happened with my son. We were on vacation in Greece, and he basically just ate fresh fruit and grilled meat for all of his meals, and suddenly I wasn't having to change his overly wet poopy diapers 5 times a day. I had brought up that he had so many poops a day and that they were never solid so many times to his doctor, and he just kept telling me all kids are different. Then while in Greece, he magically had normal bowel movements, and I just cut it out after that and realized my poor son had been living his life with a dairy allergy and his tummy had always been hurting. Because of that trip, I found out what his actual normal was. We had to completely do away with everything with even traces of dairy. He kept having reactions randomly, and then so we also recently pulled him off of wheat and he hasn't had any more reactions. Dyspraxia. Thought I was just less coordinated than most people, but my nephew was diagnosed with it. At which point my mother told me, "Oh, you were diagnosed with that when you were a kid too." Would have been nice if someone had told me that there was a reason I was so clumsy. Hey, a fellow dyspraxic. Everyone always thinks I mean to say dyslexia when it comes up. Me too. There should be a dyspraxic-only sports club where we could suck at sports together and not be embarrassed by our clumsiness. There should be lots of plasters and ice packs there too, for the inevitable injuries. POTS. For most of my childhood, I just assumed that everyone temporarily lost their vision when they stood up. Oh crap, that isn't normal? It's normal if you stand up quickly or after lying down for a long period of time. It's not normal when you're, say, getting up from the dinner table. Scoliosis. Awkward curvature of the spine. While I was growing up, I would get yelled at a lot by my parents because I kept slouching over and tilting my head. They thought it was just teenager stuff and would always pull my shoulders back and tell me to walk like a man. Hey, another scoliosis bro. Let's all stand as straight as we can for our scoliosis brothers and sisters. Apparently having clots during your period isn't normal. I didn't know until I was signing up for a research study and I mentioned I've been on the pill since I was 21 because of bad periods. They asked questions like how heavy. I'd go through a pad in an hour and super absorbent tampons would leak in 2 hours, and if I had clots. The doctor on the study was outraged. My pediatrician growing up never looked into it. I just thought I was unlucky. Turns out my thyroid was out of whack. I also had abnormal weight gain, cold intolerance, etc. Yay! So much period-related stuff is passed off as normal. My pediatrician insisted that passing out from cramps was normal and I just needed to take more ibuprofen. But then I just had bad cramps and stomach bleeding. Casually mentioned it as a normal thing when I went to get an IUD at Planned Parenthood and they were like, "No?" I've never had a doctor take me seriously about cramps. It's so frustrating. It shouldn't hurt so much that I'm dizzy and vomiting. I've never passed out from it, but I've come very close. I finally described it another way when new symptoms arose. Doctors still didn't take it very seriously, but let me get further testing because I was so upset I was crying. Turns out I have problems with cysts and fibroids. We're still in the process of diagnosing the severity and treating it. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have something you'd like to share, please feel free to do so in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our next video is up. For more videos like this one, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time! What's a real fact that some people don't want to accept? Not everyone is going to like you. You can't please everyone. You don't need to please everyone. When it comes to arguing, stating facts rarely changes people's minds. Nothing really changes anyone's mind. I can't even imagine what it would take to change somebody's mind when it comes to politics or religion, especially not a few facts said in an argument. It takes people years to change from liberal to conservative or the other way around. There's a reason it's a basic rule of good company to not discuss politics or religion. Your actions have consequences. When will you learn that your actions? Being right about one thing doesn't make you right about everything. Also the inverse. But you were wrong about this one thing, so now you can't be trusted for anything. Are you my boss? Life isn't fair, and sometimes stuff happens for no reason when you did nothing wrong. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. Also, someone winning does not mean that you are losing. You can both win. Everybody thinks that they are the hero of their story, even the villains. I always considered myself a side character. I'm more of an NPC running into a wall repeatedly, not knowing what is going on. Everyone will die eventually, and it more than likely won't be on their terms. One thing I sometimes think about is the fact that almost no one wakes up in the morning and thinks, "Yep, today is the day I'm going to die," yet it happens all the time anyway. No zebra ever gets up and thinks, "I'm going to get ripped to pieces by a lion today," no matter how often it happens to other zebras. As someone with high levels of anxiety and panic disorder, I disagree. Just because you're shouting doesn't mean you're correct. Most people think they're slightly more intelligent than the average person, but they're not, myself included. This realization hit me hard as a young college kid. I was one of those big fish, small pond kids when it came to academics. Got to college and learned that real fast. On the other side of the coin, when I was first dating my now ex-wife, I met her family. Her brother-in-law asked what I did, and I said I went to college and worked nights. His response was, "College? What are you, gay?" They literally, and I'm not kidding, thought I was gay because I went to college. My nephew thought I was gay until he was 18 because I went to college. Just so you know what the tail end of the spectrum is like. Things don't get better if you don't try to make them better. A. You are responsible for things that go wrong. B. Some things that go wrong completely have nothing to do with you, and you cannot change that fact. The two most unpleasant facts of life. I would say A is incorrect. I think it's more accurate to say, you aren't always at fault for things that go wrong, but you still have to deal with the consequences. No one owns life, but anyone who can pick up a frying pan owns death. Williams Burroughs. Having an unpopular opinion doesn't necessarily mean it's a better one. If a post on r/unpopular opinion gets a lot of upvotes, isn't it actually a popular opinion? Hard work does not equal high performance. A lot of time leads to failure, and then more failure. Got to learn to fail forward and not give up. This is graduate school in a nutshell. Specifically in science, learning to be okay with failure is probably the hardest lesson I've had to learn. You're supposed to use your turn signal anytime you make a turn or change lanes. Not only that, the turn signal is to tell people your intent to change lanes, so you should use it before you turn. Thank you! So many people don't understand that your turn signals are not for you, they are for everyone else. There's this big club, and you ain't in it. I wouldn't care to be in a club that accepts people like me anyway. I wouldn't want to be in a club that accepts this guy either. Participating in and deriving joy from other cultures and their activities is not the same thing as cultural appropriation. Obesity is not healthy and is generally from eating too much. I lost 70+ pounds pretty much just by watching my calories and moving a little more. It was a simple process, albeit not always an easy one, but when people ask me what my secret is, you'd think I'm telling them advanced alien voodoo rocket science or something. It's obvious they're expecting me to give them some sort of magic trick that will do all the work for them, like a pill or something. And then come the lame, unprovoked excuses like, "Oh, that would never work for me, fatness just runs in my family." That's a direct quote from a coworker. Or, "I could totally do that too, I'm just too busy to plan out all of my meals." Or they claim the science is always changing about what is considered healthy and unhealthy, and the list goes on and on. I like to play a fun game where I tick off a mental checklist of all of the excuses I said to myself too when I hear them being said right back to me. People want to believe that losing weight is easy, but very complicated when in reality it is the exact opposite. People don't dislike you because you're honest. They dislike you because you're an asshole. I felt this one. I'd always believed that being straightforward and refusing to pretend to like someone was the only right way to do things, and that when people would hate me for it, it was because I was honest about them. Turns out that's not how it always works, and you can't always justify being an asshole to people claiming you're just being frank with them. I'm still pretty rude sometimes, but I'm working on it. Comes with the experience, I suppose. Indeed, I came to this realization the hard way as well. For me, I was just so obtuse about social signaling, when I missed stuff, I felt like people were lying to me, when in fact they were just trying not to be an asshole, or interacting in a totally normal way that didn't involve hitting someone over the head with their message. My rebellion against the rampant dishonesty of this world was to be the only truly honest person around and demand it from others. Boy, was I hard to be around. Many people don't wash their hands in the bathroom unless they see someone else in the bathroom. What the heck, why do none of you wash your hands? My buddy explained it well when confronted. I don't piss on my hands. Nuclear is the safest source of energy and a viable solution to reduce our CO2 emissions. I am fine with nuclear power, but is it actually safer than solar? I haven't seen that claim before. The manufacturing of solar panels and large batteries is actually pretty dirty. Wind, tidal, thermal, and nuclear energies are super clean. We just need to make that damn repository so the waste can be safe for reuse one day. Being a rep for an MLM doesn't mean having your own business. Also, it's impossible to make even minimum wage as an MLM rep without exploiting at least someone. Just give it a try. Would a mutual friend who hasn't spoke to you since the 9th grade but messaged you on Facebook out of the blue lie to you? "Hey girlie, I know I barely spoke to you in high school or really even acknowledged you existed, but how are you? Want to buy my $100 moisturizer that doesn't do anything?" We are all living in the most wonderful time in the history of the world. This is a hard fact for a lot of people to accept. They would much rather think the end times are coming than appreciate how much we as a species have and have overcome. We can certainly do more to improve ourselves as a whole, and it is our duty to do better. But right now is one of the best times in human history to be alive. Well, you're right, and also a bit wrong. Correct. This is probably the best time to be a human ever in history. Also correct. The end times are coming. The actions we have taken to make this the most comfortable time in history are also going to destroy the basis for that very existence at a very, very fast rate. And the only way to avoid the worst aspects of that fate involves giving up some of our comforts. Click farms and bot influencing are real. The number next to the view count, like favorites and shares, is a line of code, not empirical fact. Trends are purchased. Your subscription to free Reddit upvotes has expired. Please select a payment option. $1, 20 upvotes per post for your next 10 posts. $10, 20 upvotes per post for your next 110 posts. That's a good deal. Where do I sign up? Being a jerk doesn't mean that you're being just honest, keeping it real, or helping anyone. 99 times out of 100, you're just being a jerk and the only person benefiting is you. People who are brutally honest are more interested in being brutal than honest. Frame this quote on the front page of Reddit, please, on a golden plaque surrounded by blue roses and a tiny pixel art of a dog. No one really thinks about you, so stop worrying about what other people think about you, because they're most likely thinking about their own problems. The world isn't as simple as all the political and economic prodigies of Reddit believe. I'd go as far to say that if your understanding of the opposing party makes them sound like comic book villains, you probably don't know as much about politics as you think you do. The average person is significantly less conscious and autonomous than we like to pretend. We are a unique species in that we have the mental potential to break free from our base animal instincts. That doesn't mean everybody or even a majority of people actually reach that potential. Everybody thinks they're immune to propaganda. We're not. Well said, comrade. Being in the army doesn't make you a hero, and people shouldn't feel like saying thank you for your service unless they want to. Trolls don't hate you. They just try to stir you up to get a reaction. If anything, they're just bored people who sit behind a screen. People on the internet can't help but give in and feed the troll, when in fact most of them would go away if you just ignore them. There are just so many people on the internet. Someone is bound to take the bait. Budgeting is not difficult. It is basic math. Credit cards are not magic-free money. They will eat you alive. Budgeting is not difficult. It's basic math. You just don't have any self-control. Me to me daily. You shouldn't have a child if you can't afford to look after one. And that doesn't mean money. You need to spend time raising a child because otherwise, even though my uncle may disagree, you'll end up with kids that don't have any relationship at all with you. A lot of fathers do this. They think that being a father just means making as much money as possible so my kid will have the most materially comfortable life. They don't understand that the marginal value of money decreases as income and wealth increases. If I were a poor child that didn't have adequate food, clothing, and housing and lived in a violent neighborhood, I would absolutely want my father to take a job with long hours or frequent travel in order to get me into a better material circumstances. But if my father made $120K a year and I already had plenty of food, clothing, toys, and books and school supplies, and lived in a spacious house in a safe neighborhood, I would not want him to take a job that paid $180K if it meant he was on business travel half the time. Feelings and being offended are not legitimate counter-arguments to a factual challenge. This is the kind of statement that everyone will ascribe to their enemies and agree with, even people diametrically opposed who would accuse the other of doing it. She's not into you, bro. She's just being nice. I accept this one wholeheartedly. I'm still not convinced my girlfriend likes me. I'm pretty sure my wife can tolerate me on most days. Not everybody is nice or even capable of becoming decent people. Some people are just bad, and functioning psychopaths are all around us. Also, not all psychopaths are serial killers, and not all serial killers are psychopaths. Most psychopaths are functioning members of society. Surgeons, lawyers, soldiers, pro sports, etc. All areas where having overly active emotions are detrimental to the task at hand. Kevin Dutton has done extensive research and written several books on the topic. Most people conflate psychopaths with sadists. They are exclusive and have different issues. America is not immune to uprisings, dictatorships, and the collapse of democracy. If we allow it, it can happen here just as it has happened in other countries. The only real reason it has never happened here before is that we're such a young country. Look at the Colosseum. Each stone is dry-fitted, no mortar, cut precisely to fit with one another. The people who built that thought their civilization would last forever. Almost every society in history has had some form of slavery. In general, don't buy Nestle products. Those greedy people milked California's water and then resold it in bottles of water, if I recall correctly. Most water bottle companies do though, so don't support water bottles either, unless you're looking to refill your water in BPA-free water bottles. Chances are, your tap water is cleaner than bottled water, which might just come from a tap anyways, unless you live in Flint or a developing or underdeveloped country. Your tap water is cleaner than bottled water, which might just come from the tap anyways. Yeah, bottled water has done a good job of convincing people that bottled water is safer than tap water, and that's just not true. Companies like Nestle have not held to the same strict standards that actual public water utility companies are. The strong do as they please, and the weak suffer what they must. Politicians are heavily influenced by whomever gives them the most money. What? Do you mean they don't do it to help society and people? Most people act in their own best interests, and that's okay. That's only true if you consider, I feel good for helping others to be self-interest. Many go out of their way to dedicate their time and energy to helping others, and I wager the vast majority of people will sacrifice their immediate well-being to help someone else. Sometimes that just means losing an hour helping a stranded motorist. Sometimes it means risking your life trying to save a drowning child. Humanity has only survived as long as it has because of an innate desire in humans to help and care for each other. Doing so benefits all of us, and so in that sense it may still be considered self-interest, but I think the term loses all meaning if we use it that broadly. We all have a bad side, a side we don't want others to see, so we hide it away and put on a facade to cope with life. Sometimes I feel like I've never been my genuine self. In my eyes, your genuine self is every side of you, good and bad, mask and no mask. Learning to accept that we all put on masks is very freeing since there's no pressure to constantly be genuinely happy. You are not special and very few people will ever care about you. You are special, but not in an entitled way. You are special in the fact that you are unique, and that's how far it goes. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. That does not mean all opinions carry the same weight. 30 minutes of Googling articles you already know you'll agree with do not count as research. Oh, you did research on climate change or vaccines or border security or any other subject? Let me read through your methodology. Was it qualitative or quantitative? Where was it published? Could I look at the data you gathered? What did the review board have to say about your processes? Were you sufficiently able to provide recommendations and disprove prevailing counterpoints? I researched this. Your second point cuts to the core issue of Reddit debate. This site moves too fast and people lose interest too quickly for an actual discussion. No one is going to spend 6 hours poring over academic articles for a Reddit argument, and if they did, I question their sanity. So research means Google the point I'm trying to make and post the first article from a respectable source. We are all getting older, all of us, all the time. You can fight it, and you can make your face look like smooth plastic and your body look like a 12-year-old boy's with big tits, but that number is still only going to go in one direction. Am I supposed to be turned on? Most Republican and Democrat politicians don't give a crap about y'all. I really don't think that this fact is restricted to politicians from those two American parties, to be honest. It generally holds true for every political group. 50% of the time, everyone puts in the USB the correct way. Realistically, that number must be slightly higher, because some people must have mastered the black magic of consistently putting it in the right way. Facts don't care about your feelings. And that, Timmy, is why I refer to them as your adopted parents, not your parents, as that is factually incorrect. You see, your real parents gave you up for adoption when you were born because you were unplanned. I know it's hard to accept, but facts don't care about your feelings. People will not change their consumption habits or lifestyle choices to become more sustainable until the impacts of climate change or pollution personally impacts them. This is going to get buried, but I'm going to write it out anyways. Change can be good. For the most part, it has been good. I'm specifically talking about the older people who are stuck in the past. Back in my day, we had to go to a library, find a book, and look up facts. Back in my day, we had to wash our clothes by hand. Like, okay, are you saying we should all just ditch technology that makes our lives easier? They should be more appreciative for how far humans have come in their lifetimes. It's funny because the people who say that stuff didn't have to build their house by hand or migrate across the world like their ancestors. People tend to look at things they don't like and think that things are going down the toilet, while the glory days were awesome. But a lot of things are the way they are now because of the way they used to be actually sucked. A basic example is older people that scoff at contracts and say back in my day all you needed was a handshake. Well, obviously handshakes didn't work out for someone at some point. Mental illnesses can be just as deadly as physical illnesses. Also, you can't tell a depressed person to be positive. That's the same as telling someone with high blood pressure to just lower your blood pressure. The Earth is round. Can't believe we are actually having to debate this with people today. Oblate spheroids for the win. The world isn't and can never be completely fair. Learn how to deal with this internally without blaming everyone else for your misfortunes. But also strive to better the world. Don't play the victim, but definitely call out injustice instead of becoming apathetic. Nobody cares about an inside joke that doesn't include them. Even when you hastily explain the story behind the joke, if you weren't there, then it's not funny. You can state facts, but without proper context, they merely highlight your ignorance at best, your intent to mislead at worst. No one owes you anything. Society does not owe you anything. You are not entitled to anything simply because you exist. False. You're entitled to basic human rights. Your thinking is the thinking of fascists. If you're not entitled to basic human rights, then your rights are a privilege granted to you by the state and can be taken away at their whim. Words do hurt people, and you don't get to choose how you feel when words are said. Responding, coping with something is not the same as feeling. Just don't let it bother you is the most empty bullcrap advice you can give someone because it's not something you can choose whether or not to have bothered you. It's how you process and move forward that you have control over. Men are stronger than women. For a woman to win against a man in a strength contest, you would have to put a pro-heavyweight woman wrestler against a skinny nerd. My universal fact is that in order for us to truly value certain morals, the opposite of what we value also has to exist. Otherwise, we lose focus on why those morals are valued, because then they become a part of societal expectations and are not important to us as individuals. I.e., in order for Batman to measure himself and his code as a set of values, he needs the Joker to test them. That you're insignificant to this world, and ultimately nothing you do matters. I help people lose weight, start exercising, and eat healthy. Been doing that for 14 years. I believe that matters. People don't actually want a reasonable discussion online, as they have already made up their minds about a certain position, and are not open to new information, and will never consider the person they're arguing with's points because they're only interested in proving them wrong instead of actually exchanging ideas. I know this is anecdotal, but the amount of times I see someone who says they don't know and asks a question get downvoted kinda proves your point. The laws of thermodynamics apply to our bodies. It is not possible to eat fewer calories than you're burning off and gain weight. With rare exceptions due to medications causing water retention, etc., if you can't lose weight, it's because you are still eating too many calories. It is calories in versus calories out. And yes, you can lose weight if you really want to. You're just making excuses otherwise. I have hypothyroidism and I'm not overweight because I do not consume more calories than I burn off on a regular basis. It is not genetics, it is just physics. Nobody owes you a debate, especially on the internet. I can't stand these Ben Shapiro types going around with "debate me" practically tattooed on their foreheads. Someone is perfectly within their rights to tell you to screw off without a moderator and judges observing. Screeching about how you're not being met in logical and rational debate over whatever opinion you might have honestly just signals that you want to browbeat someone with your views. To add to this, most people don't practice debating in their spare time. Just because you can list all the logical fallacies doesn't mean your point is 100% right. It could just be that the other person sucks at debating, especially if you are the type that goes out looking for an argument. What's an oh crap moment where you realized you've been doing something the wrong way for years? I owned a light blue colored microwave for about 3 years that a family member gave me as a housewarming gift. Thought it was cool. Never seen a blue microwave before. One night, a buddy asked why I never took the blue plastic wrap off of my microwave and then proceeded to peel it off for me. Damn, it's silver. Still miss my blue microwave sometimes though. After moving to a new city, I went to the laundromat and the Korean lady working was yelling at me about something I couldn't understand. After some pantomime, it became clear that she was upset that I was putting in the wrong detergent, but it was the same kind I have been using for 8 years, since moving away to college and behind. Turns out I've been washing my clothes with only fabric softener for nearly a decade. They always smelled good, so I never really thought about it. Not my proudest moment. I'll pour one out for the absorbency of all your towels. Wait, does fabric softener reduce towel absorbency, or just the lack of actual detergent? My family always had a cup next to the bathroom sink in case you needed to rinse your mouth after brushing your teeth, or maybe get a quick drink of water in the middle of the night. My grandma had the same cup at her house. I used it for years whenever I was thirsty. One day she saw me doing this and said, "Don't use that cup. That's where grandma puts her teeth." When I was a kid, I was told that the paper that came on the cupcakes and muffins was edible. I would spend a decade eating them like this, paper and all, until a friend pointed it out. I would be so terrified of you if I saw you do this. This is the first comment in this thread that's had me laughing out loud for about 30 seconds. Thank you for that. Dude, did you see that? That guy just ate a cupcake with the paper still on it, candle lit and all in one bite. Travel frequently for work and only just noticed that most laptop bags have a strap to place over a rolling suitcase handle. That's what that thing is for? I would probably look like Megamind if I learnt as much in school as I do on this app. I taught myself how to play the clarinet. 6 months later, someone told me that I'd been playing it with the mouthpiece upside down. Orchestral clarinetist here. You're some kind of wizard for making that work, and I have much respect for you. I used to fill the kettle by the spout. My parents have always done it this way. I thought the center part was mainly for decoration, but not functional. I don't know why I never questioned this. One day, I bought a new tea kettle and my husband was like, "WTF, what is inside of this?" And with great ease, opened the center to pull out a manual with instructions and whatnot. I was drinking dirty paper water for like 2 weeks. Okay, but why did your parents do this in the first place? I used to pull my pants down all the way at the urinal. I've seen this as an adult, in the workforce, as a programmer. I weep for our prospects. Seen it in the military. Guy pulls his pants all the way down, uses both hands to hold his shirt up, and then just lets fly hands free. Great. Now my third highest rated post is about seeing another guy pee weirdly. Only a few more updates and it will be my #1 post. Found out I was lighting incense wrong. My boyfriend and I got a bunch to add to our collection of nice smells, and we would light them and they would just start a little inferno. Convinced we were just buying cheap garbage incense, we stopped using them. I proceed to buy a different brand in the hope that those would work. I test light and the same thing, it just goes up in an inferno. Roommate informs us you're supposed to blow them out once they catch. Oops. This is the best answer here. I love this. Darn cheap sticks just made another inferno. I agree, I love this one. So cute picturing them like, "Honey, it happened again. Started another darn inferno." I always thought eggplant tasted itchy. Like itchy was a flavor, like sour or salty. Fed some to my baby and his face turned red wherever the eggplant touched. And I realized we're both just allergic to eggplant, and itchy isn't a flavor. I laughed at itchy isn't a flavor. The worst part is now I want to taste something itchy. One day, I used the key fob to remotely start my dad's car. It was an oh crap moment for him. 2 years and he didn't realize he had this handy little function. My dad bought an aftermarket remote start and took it in to get installed. When he went to pick it up, they asked him what was wrong with the factory one. One day, I accidentally hit a button on my extra key fob in my new, to me, car, and it started. I was baffled. Then, when I went in and tried to put the keys in and hit the brake, it turned off. I sat there for a few seconds trying to figure out what was wrong. Then it hit me. I have a remote starter. I owned a car with swivel headlights, and it was very nice to have that. Discovered 3 years in that I had never turned on the swivel feature. Oh man, I thought the AC button in my car, Snowflake, was defrosting, so I never used it in the summer. Did I feel dumb? 2 years. Did you think you had a busted AC and decide not to try getting it fixed? Or do you just live somewhere that you were fine with just the fan blowing ambient temperature air at you? I didn't find out that I was supposed to punch out for lunch until my 3rd job, and even then it was because a coworker mentioned it in passing that they were clocking out for lunch. That's freaking awesome. I can't believe none of your bosses never said anything to you. At my first and only full-time job I've ever had, they didn't require you to clock out for lunch. They said they just docked 30 minutes of pay so that you would have more time to get out to the break room and eat, instead of everyone lining up 5 minutes before lunch to try and hurry out to the break room. Cock guns. Everyone says that you're supposed to pull it towards you, but I saw a Reddit comment saying that they're designed to be pushed away instead. My boss looks at me funny for doing it, but it's exponentially cleaner and tighter. If you pull as you go, it's a struggle not to pull the cock out of the groove. By pushing, you keep the cock snugly where it belongs. Giggity. I've never had a problem with pulling it out. Giggity. Painted houses for the better part of 10 years. pushing it in front would probably be massively uncomfortable for me, lol. Not mine, but my dad has been spelling his name wrong his whole life. He's 51. His name is Jeffrey, and he's been spelling it like that since he learned how to spell his name. A few months ago, my mom pulled out his birth certificate, and we all learned it's actually spelled Jeffery. Not sure if he spells it correctly now, but it was definitely an oh crap moment for him. Grandfather thought his name was Harvey his whole life. Got his birth certificate at 65, and it's Harmon. My aunt and uncle gave my grandmother a copy of her birth certificate for her birthday. Apparently she never had one. On her 77th birthday, she found out she was actually 78. My wife and I have this ceiling fan light in our bedroom in the house that we moved into 2 years ago. It has a remote control for the fan and lights. About a year and a half ago, the lights suddenly stopped working. The fan works well, and we didn't have a ton of money, so we just lived with lamps in the room, always being frustrated with how damn dark it is. I was scrolling some of the other threads on Ask Reddit a few weeks ago, and the top post was a guy talking about how his lights stopped working years ago, and then he found out that it was just dimmed, which you can do by holding down the button on the remote. It sounded so much like our fan, I went and tried it. Dimmed. Oh gosh, I remember reading that post too. If this happens, I hope I remember to check that first. Living in a foreign country where I was actively learning the language, social cues go a long way when learning a language on the spot. That being said, someone once said a phrase to me while serving a hot dish, which I assumed as meaning "excuse me." After going through crowds and lines replicating the same phrase in an attempt to be respectful of those around me, I abruptly found out that the phrase actually meant enjoy. Hindsight completely makes sense. The odd looks I would get by saying enjoy while squeezing past people all suddenly made sense. Part of me was hoping you've been announcing that you're a hot dish while passing by people for all these years. Not because I've been doing something wrong my entire life, but saw it wrong. I'm colorblind, and my entire life I thought peanut butter was green until I turned 19. And when I found out it was brown, my mind was blown. It took so long because no one really talks about the color of things like that. When I was in high school, I was talking to a colorblind friend asking the usual dumb questions like, what color is a green light when you're driving? He said he knows which light is which, even though they all look gray. So I said, oh, so Yoda is gray to you then? His horrified expression as he yelled, Yoda is green? Was priceless. For years, I would struggle to take the cap off of new deodorant, the one under the lid. It's always so stuck down onto the deodorant stick. I had an aha moment a year or so ago that I could simply crank the deodorant stick up until the cap could easily be removed. I'm 34. It took me until age 34 to realize this. Oh, well, this makes all the sense in the world when you see it spelled out like that. All this time I've been biting on the little nubbin that protrudes from the plastic and pulling it off, like pulling the pin on a powder-fresh hand grenade. I am 38. Got you beat. I'm 71 and just opened a new deodorant last week with my teeth. When I first got a debit card, I would go out to eat at restaurants with my friends. I would leave a cash tip on the table. When I got the receipt to put how much I was paying, I would write down how much money I left on the table. For at least 6 months, I gave double tips to every waitress I had. I did this to a pizza guy once. I gave him a cash tip, and when he gave me the receipt to sign, I put down how much cash tip I gave him. He told me, "Whoa, you're giving me more?" And I was like, "Is that not how it works?" He said he'd correct it for me once he got back to the store. I felt pretty embarrassed. Why didn't he just give you back the cash? My mom refused to show me how to use a tampon because she thought I should stick to pads because they were safer. This was back when Googling how to do things wasn't an option, and I was the first in my friend group to get my period, and a little sheepish about it. So basically, I was shoving that sucker up there with the entire applicator for like 2 years, wondering why tampons didn't seem to work that well for me. It wasn't until I was in high school and one of my friends went on a crusade against plastic waste and started advocating for tampons with no applicators that all of a sudden I realized I had massively screwed up. Same here, and it pinched so bad if you sat down wrong. I'm so glad I'm not alone. My mom has been pronouncing Massachusetts Massatoo-craps for years, and no one corrected her because they thought she just had strong feelings about Massachusetts. My mother cannot pronounce that or Mitsubishi. She tries, but same outcome, and Mitsubishi comes out Mitsubishi. Is she Southern? Because in Georgia, where they seemingly have their own language, it's always Mitsubishi. My name is Ryan. It took me until I was in the first grade to realize my name wasn't in the alphabet. My mom had told me that my name was in the alphabet, and I felt so lucky. She obviously meant the letters to spell my name were in the alphabet. But nope, it took that long to realize the alphabet didn't go W, X, Ryan, Z. Don't feel bad, my birthday is in July. I was under the impression until I was 7 that on the 4th of July the fireworks, specifically, were for my birthday. I felt really dumb, but also really sad when I realized they weren't. My birthday is on the 5th, so I was in the same boat. My parents thought it was cute, so they played along with it. Well, I ended up getting in a fight with a kid on the playground over it and came to a harsh realization. Sometimes I assume I know the lyrics to songs I have heard on the radio for a long time. I always sang Toto's Africa as, "I miss the rains down in Africa," until someone made fun of me and told me it was "I bless the rains down in Africa." I argued, that makes no sense. Why would someone bless rain? It's a song about longing to return to Africa, which is why they missed the rain. Then I went home and looked up the lyrics. Even more fun when English isn't your first language. We found love in a homeless place. We found love in a homeless place. I figured they were boning at a homeless shelter. That you do, in fact, need to disassemble your laundry dryer and clean the lint out from under the drum once per year. I'm 34 and never knew this. No one ever said anything. Never saw anyone do this. The crappiest thing is that my parents also learned this the hard way and never bothered to give me a tip when I bought my first dryer. Luckily, the wife and I discovered the lint buildup when changing the rollers. I said to my parents, "Wow, it really builds up in there," and they were like, "Oh yeah, you need to do that like once a year." Oh my! I just found the thing I didn't know either. My dryer has been taking longer to dry lately, and now I'm thinking that might be why. For me, I would clean my lint trap after every time I used it, but my dryer was taking longer. Turns out I had to scrub my lint trap because it was getting covered with a film from the dryer sheets. Who knew? So I had always assumed that gas stations had pipes that led to a nearby oil plant or something. I live in Houston, so during Hurricane Harvey in 2017, there was so much news about the gas stations being empty because they weren't being filled. I was in the car with my sisters, and we were talking about it, and I mentioned I don't understand how the gas supply was limited when the pipes are underground and not affected by flooding. They both looked at me with the most confused faces ever, and one of them said, "You do know that trucks come to fill up gas stations, right?" And I was completely shaken by this and had no idea, and they asked me, "So when you see the big trucks at the little gas stations in the city with the tubes in the ground, what do you think they're doing?" And I replied, "Filling up their gas?" Not something I did wrong, but definitely something I thought wrong for 17 years. Well, this was a few years ago. I was the director of IT for a very large company. I was given a new cell phone and told to set up my voicemail. I didn't know that when I recorded my name, it would be played to whomever I would leave a voicemail for. Well, the name I recorded was Duder84 Corporate IT God. I worked there for 4 years until someone in the hallway referred to me as the Corporate IT God. I was so embarrassed. Since the dawn of time, I would pick up the silverware and utensils out of their tray in the dishwasher and put them away in their drawers, then go back and pick up more out of the dishwasher. Then one day, I saw my wife lift the tray out of the dishwasher, and I legit stood there with my mouth open. God damn it, I knew that thing moved because I removed it and changed it around to make pans or big dishes fit better. And I've still been going back and forth for the silverware. Mine routinely shifts and comes out as I'm trying to pull the silverware out, if there's too much in it. And my idiot response is to get mad and shove it back into place instead of realizing the universe is trying to show me something. Not wrong for years, but I work help desk, and we use a specific, terrible piece of software for our support system, IBM Notes. It turns out that for the first 9 months I had been working there, it wasn't set up properly, so I wasn't sending any emails from it, at all. No notifications that the ticket went to me, no responses from me, no close notifications, nothing. Someone noticed this, took a look, and fixed a setting. I immediately sent out over 1,000 emails to everyone in the company. So basically, the company could have done without you for 9 months. You could have done nothing for 9 months. Did you not realize that you never got a reply to any of your messages? I didn't realize I had to brush the back of my teeth as well as the front. I was a dumb kid. I blamed toothpaste advertisements. Until I was 15, had 9 fillings and a root canal. Same! Embarrassingly enough, I thought you brushed your teeth to keep them white. I didn't know anything about keeping them healthy. So I thought, I don't mind if my back teeth are yellow, nobody's going to see them anyway. This is a fail on your parents, pediatrician, pediatric nurse, and dentist and hygienist, and not on you. When I realized at 18 that the phrase is up and Adam, not up and Adam, I was always wondering who the hell Adam was. Thought it was a stupid phrase. Up and at them. No, it's up and Adam. No one really ever told me that you don't need to buy shoes with the 2 fingers space in front of the toes after your feet stop growing. I had been buying an entire size too big until about age 23. 23. One day in college, I decided to try a pair of Merrell barefoot type shoes, and after reading the sizing guide, bam, mind blown. It's a terribly obvious mistake. I, 29 female, like to blame on being an only child, but really I'm just a moron. I had this problem until about 25. Never really thought about it. I was always a size 10. That's what my mom bought me in high school. Why would it be any different now? Only thing is, I stopped growing at 14 and never had another growth spurt. As guys, we were always told you'll keep growing till late teens or early 20s for some. Yeah, that didn't happen for me. Luckily, I was buying a pair of nice boots and the clerk was like, dude, there's no way you're a size 10. You're barely a size 9. I was so happy once the blisters I'd always dealt with went away. Dude, me too. I was one of the biggest kids in my class in 8th grade, and then everyone kept growing except me. I'm 31 and have a shirt from when I was 10 that still fits me. I used to think just reading the material was how everyone studied, so that's how I did it too. I never quite understood why my grades were so low. I'd be like, I read the page, I don't know what happened, until I saw my friend making flowcharts and summaries, and I was like, we don't have to do that, you know? And he was like, nah, I'm just studying. It blew my mind how much better my grades got. Looking back on it, I was never really taught how to study. I don't think a lot of people were, and for some people it's instinctual, but it isn't for everyone. Schools should hold a course on various methods of studying. I'm learning it properly now for the first time as a mature student returning to university. Pro tip, testing yourself is by far the best way to enhance long-term recall. Think cue cards and mock exams. Even better when they're open-ended questions like, explain the 7 sins of memory, and you have to name and explain each one without notes in front of you. Do that once and you'll probably get over 90% on your exams. Winding a watch that was battery powered for like a year. Ah heck, thanks for making me think of that. What did you even do? What part is there to wind? Did you just turn it backwards 12 hours or something? Old watches were spring-powered, not battery-powered. Winding them retightened the spring. My grandfather wound his watch. My parents got teenage me a watch. I regularly turn the little knob that one uses to adjust the time and date without pulling it out. It does nothing when you don't pull it out. I realized the multicolored tape measures glued to the door frames of gas stations, etc. are for identifying robbers, not for measuring yourself as you walk out. I mean, they can be, but that's not why they're there, unless you're a robber. I've seen so many stores where whoever installed it clearly didn't know what it was there for either, because I'm 6 foot, and in some stores I'm 7 foot and in some I'm 5. It depends on the angle of the camera. I am lactose intolerant. I genuinely did not know this for the first 25 years of my life. I always had to go to the bathroom after eating something with cheese in it. One day it just clicked. I bought some Lactaid, took it before the next time I ate cheese, and didn't have to go to the bathroom. It was mind-blowing. I have no idea how I didn't make the connection for years. So I guess you could say instead of having an oh crap moment, I had a no crap moment. I thought food allergies were all, I can't breathe, I need an EpiPen related. I started eating healthier around 25 and started getting bad eczema. I went to the dermatologist after a few years and she actually said to me, well, this looks like food allergies, but you don't start developing those randomly at 27. A couple of months later, I realized nuts made my tongue feel funny, so I cut them out and my skin was better within a month. I'd been allergic to nuts and was almost 30 by the time I realized it. Wiping my ass. I always thought everyone reached their hand between their legs, but after someone made a joke about wiping their ass, I asked how they did it. Then for curiosity's sake, I asked a bunch more people. I'm the only person I know that wipes their ass from between their legs. I accidentally logged my tips incorrectly for the first month or so of working at a restaurant. I'm not quite sure how I was doing it, but I ended up not getting taxed on a couple of $100s because I never logged them as income. At the restaurant I worked at in college, no one logged tips. We claimed 0 at the end of our shifts, and when you're doing your taxes, they just automatically assume you received a percentage of your sales in tips. That's lucky. Not sure how standard practice it is, but the last restaurant I worked at, you had to log your tips electronically and submit your receipts to the manager for verification. If you didn't have a paper receipt, you weren't getting those tips. My mom used to refer to me as a bull in a china shop. I always heard it as bowl in a china shop, thinking it was a compliment. At about 22, I hear someone else use the phrase and realized she meant bull, not bowl. We bought a nice liquor cabinet. We got it delivered and noticed it was a bit shorter than we thought. No biggie. 3 years later, we're moving. Lift up the cabinet and these beautiful ornate screw-on legs wrapped in tape and bubble wrap fall off the bottom. Looks so much better now. Reminds me of when my mom bought a new sofa. About 6 months later, she's hoovering under the cushions when the base fabric pulls back to reveal some sort of metal and a mattress. Turns out we had a sofa bed. Made my friends sleep on the floor with a sofa bed right there. This one is extra funny if one of your friends recognized the sofa bed from one of their relatives' houses and was just lying next to it all night going, "Why would he do this? I thought we were friends." What's the worst case of rich kid syndrome you've seen? A kid in my graduating high school class was very wealthy. His parents bought him a Land Rover when he was 16 and he crashed it into a school bus. They bought him another Land Rover and he lost it street racing. Guess what? They bought him a Mercedes. That'll teach him. This kind of pales compared to some of these, but I'll give it a go. When I was a broke as heck bike messenger, I was dating a woman who was an heir to a major restaurant fortune. One evening, she wanted to go to a club downtown, and I said I couldn't go because I didn't have any money. She said I should come on anyway, so I figured she was footing the bill. When we got to the club and it was time to pay the cover at the door, she pays for herself and starts to walk in. I'm like, "Hey, I don't have any money. I can't get in." She comes back out and tells me to just put it on my credit card. But of course, I don't have one. Then she tells me she'll drive me to an ATM. But of course, I don't have a bank account because I'm broke. I'm standing there in the street with her trying futilely to explain that I literally do not have any money. She could not grasp the concept. I ended up walking home and she went to the club. We did not last long. So she would drive you to an ATM but not pay for you to get in? Charming. I know, right? Where are the perks of dating an heiress? Man, those K-dramas are so inaccurate. The fraternity did a pledge event in which we were placed in a limo. Normal friend. Wow, this is awesome. I've never been in a limo before. Rich kid syndrome friend. Haven't you ever been to the airport? I've never even seen a limo at the airport. Then you obviously don't go to Rockefeller Airport. Everyone comes in limos. There's no TSA, there's a champagne waterfall near the entrance, and all of the planes are covered in gold leaf and diamonds. I went to a private school for high school, so we had a lot of those crashed one fancy car and daddy bought them a new one kind of stories floating around, but I didn't know any of them personally. Then I went to a private college. Suddenly most of my classmates seemed to be these people. The worst by far was this guy my roommate dated for a while. Had a really nice car, but had no idea how to take care of it. When it started to have trouble, he dropped it in front of a friend's house and had his parents buy him a new one. Spilled a drink all over someone's computer, and when they got upset, he laughed and told them they could just get a new one. Told several professors that he paid for an A, so he damn well better get it. In poetry class. WTF, dude. That was the easiest A ever. Didn't understand why my roommate went home for a weekend to help her dad after surgery. He asked her why she didn't have people for that. Threw away his textbooks when he was done with them. I dug through his trash with his roommate, and we split the hall even Stevens. And so much more. He didn't last long as my roommate's boyfriend, nor as anyone's friend. I don't think he ever graduated. Weirdly, he had a twin sister who was very sweet and down to earth, so I have no idea how that happened. If I learned anything from this thread, it's that I should follow rich people around and sell their trash. Figure out when trash day is for the gated community. You can get some really good finds if you go curb crawling early enough in the morning. My suite mate freshman year of college would pay me and my roommate and his roommate to do his chores for him every couple of weeks. He literally gave me $20 for making his bed. That sounds like the best case of rich kid syndrome. The dude would stand in a club and rip up bills of 10 euros yelling, "This is nothing to me!" Okay, how about just giving away a drink instead of antagonizing anyone in sight? My broke ass crawling around picking up half tens to tape together? Well, my well-off ass would do that. Free money. That's a 10 euro opportunity cost right there. I met a kid who didn't understand the concept of washing dishes. My wife went back to college, new city, didn't know anyone. Started a movie night thing to meet some people and build a social circle. We provided a home-cooked meal, a fun movie that most people hadn't seen, and a place to gather went over great and had 6 to 12 people showing up each week to hang out and talk and eat our food. Generally, good people, because she was going back to college, a lot of college kids came. All good. I knew this one guy was from a really rich family. His first night there, he was bragging to everyone who will listen about his 30K plus truck his parents just bought him and telling everybody how awesome he is. After everything is done, we're collecting dishes in the kitchen and he walks over and follows me to the kitchen. He walks in and puts his dish and silverware in the trash can. "Hey man, what are you doing?" I'm assuming his brain blanked for a second. No big deal. "What? Give me the dishes, don't throw them out. It's a ceramic plate, not a paper one." "Why?" he asks, obviously confused. "I'm going to wash it." "Why?" he repeats. Now I'm confused. "So it'll be clean for next time?" "Oh, like the dining hall." "Oh, okay, sure." I found out later he basically lives off takeout, restaurants, etc. He's never cooked anything in his life. His family has servants who clean up after meals, and he just assumed dishes were something you threw out when you were done. College was the first place where he even saw the idea of putting dishes somewhere other than the trash, or leaving them on the table afterwards. He wasn't a bad guy, honestly. Just, I was amazed something so incredibly basic had slipped by him for years. That's incredible. I'm sure he would have seen a cartoon or a sitcom where one of the characters is doing the washing up at some point in his upbringing, or even possibly wandered into his slave kitchen to see one of the help doing the dishes. How is this an alien concept to him? This is why I call bullcrap on a lot of these. Rich kids aren't void of pop culture or a basic understanding of society. Was an RA in college. One of my residents was a rich freshman from Rhode Island. He lives on an island and takes a ferry into town. Anyways, his first week, he asked if there was fresh water available in the shower. I didn't understand what he meant, but apparently he didn't like showering with city water and didn't realize it was everywhere he went. I was so shocked and didn't know what to say, so I suggested he use his water bottles to clean himself. Yeah, he didn't last long. I work with a girl who said she only drinks new water. She explained new water meant only bottled water because it's new because they make it fresh just to bottle it. Another colleague explained the water cycle and that bottled water isn't new water at all. She was dumbfounded. Was she disgusted? If she doesn't know, please be sure to specify that she could have drank filtered dinosaur piss. Girl in my high school physics class offered her brand new iPhone to be destroyed in an experiment because my dad will just buy me a new one. She had it for like 1 week. Was her name TechRax by any chance? Those videos make me sad. The brand new phone I've wanted for so long now? Let's hammer the crap out of it and put it underwater. My friend was Chinese Canadian. She worked as an English tutor for Chinese uni students. Her role was to teach them functional English, help their pronunciation and work with them on essays, etc. What ended up happening was her teaching these students life skills, like how to use a washing machine or how to grocery shop. She had to call one family because they were sending the 19-year-old kid 25 grand a month for living expenses. This was back when a student apartment was like $600 a month on average. She explained to the parents that the amount was excessive. The parents chuckled about it but didn't stop. Damn, that kid was making more than most of their professors. Do any professors make anywhere remotely close to $300,000 a year? In the 90s, no less? I went to a private Catholic high school, so you had to have a lot of spoiled rich kids. My first car was a 1994 Toyota 4Runner that mom had gotten at a police auction. It was raised and had a pretty good sound system, and eventually the antenna broke off, so I stuck a coat hanger in there. This car was ghetto as heck, and all my friends loved it, mostly because I was one of the first people in my class who could drive. Anyway, my friend's girlfriend at the time was spoiled as heck, and she was given a Mercedes-Benz S-Class as a birthday gift. She constantly talked crap about my car and talked about how much better her Benz was, and how she would never be caught dead in a Toyota. I just told her to enjoy it while she could because she was going to wreck her car and daddy wasn't going to buy her another one. Fast forward to that fateful day when she did crash her car a few miles away from school. I recognized her car, so I stopped to ask if she was okay. She was fine. I told her I would offer you a ride home, but you wouldn't be caught dead in my car, now would you? I left her ass there. Yeah, I pulled over mostly to rub it in her face. Yeah, I was petty as hell, so sue me. She shouldn't have been such a bitch. I volunteer for Burning Man, which happens to attract some of the worst trustafarians I have ever seen. People who claim to live bohemian lifestyles of art and magic, that also have unending parental support for their magical globetrotting adventure. It's frustrating because these people live in the most sheltered bubble of all. I can't even begin to describe how infuriating it is to deal with folks who can drop $50K in a week at a festival. I was wondering how some of those people afford that crap. As a lowish income earner, I can safely say you can do the event for cheap. It's not the event itself that costs a lot. It's these kids buying a fresh hippie wardrobe, renting a spot to camp from a camp selling them, buying 10 pounds of sage, hand drums for whatever reason, and all the drugs their crew cannot handle for a week. This is before you get into the paid photographers who follow them around for their fresh new cover photos and Instagram albums. It's an event that you can do for cheap. I pull it off for about $400 over 10 days before I count my useless spending. Once when I was at camp, I and a few other kids were playing a game. Kids from a different part of the camp came over and told us to leave. We replied that we were there first. One of them replied, "Yeah, but does your dad have a helicopter?" Worked at a Trader Joe's while going to college, as did a lot of other people working there. One day, while stocking the shelves with a coworker, a father and his daughter were shopping next to my coworker. I overheard the daughter ask, "Daddy, what is she doing?" The father replied, "Honey, that's what happens when you don't go to college." My coworker cried for the rest of her shift. The father was asked to leave. I can't make many assumptions about his wealth, but he definitely had the mentality. Wow. Of course, there are so many people who treat retail workers like crap their parents teach them to do it. It was sad because the girl was probably younger than 10, and you could see that she just took his comment in stride. This is how you make crappy people. Back in middle school, when flip phones or razors were in, a friend asked to use my phone to call his parents because his phone died. I hesitated, but then I handed him my Nokia block phone. He looked at it and was like, "What the hell is that?" Laughed and walked away. What an idiot. My classmate at university was from Qatar. Family owned large shares in a bank and was generally very deeply involved with the financial world in the Middle East. Needless to say, they were disgustingly filthy rich. On the first day on campus, we all decide to play soccer, so he goes to his room to change. When we come back from playing, we all go back to his room, and when we walk in, his clothes were still exactly where he had thrown them on the floor. He lost his crap at the idea that nobody would clean his room for him and that he had to do his own laundry. He ended up going shopping every 2 to 3 weeks for really nice and expensive clothes and would throw them out after wearing them a few times because he didn't want to do laundry. I'm talking about a Brooks Brothers button-down shirt worth over $100 only being worn once or twice before ending up in the trash. I would have gone through the garbage to retrieve some of the clothes for myself. Don't let his $100 shirts go to waste. Funny thing is, I'm pretty sure some of the kids did this. News about his habit spread pretty quickly, so everybody on the floor was aware of it. The problem is that he was really lanky and not many people would fit into the clothes that he wore. I used to work at a wholesale kitchen appliance distributor. It was a multi-million-dollar company. The CEO's daughter was my age, 23 at the time, and would often come to shoot the crap with us in sales. She had a high-rise condo by herself downtown worth about $300K. After I left, I bumped into one of my old coworkers and she came up in our conversation. I asked how she was doing, and my coworker informed me that Daddy bought her another high-rise condo, which was directly across from her current condo, and the only other condo on that floor. Why did she get 2 high-rise condos? Well, she wanted the floor to herself. I kinda felt sorry for her because she was an only child and didn't have many friends. She'd also never had a boyfriend in her life. She confided this in me when we were talking alone one time, and said all the guys she tries to date are intimidated by her family's wealth. Looking back now, I think she might have been coming on to me. I still regret not asking her out. Maybe she got the other condo for you. Operation Condo 2, Rich Man's Daughter. Some rich family paid him a few $1,000s to fly down and give private scuba lessons to them in the Bahamas. In scuba, you have to demonstrate you can handle all the skills in the pool before they let you in the ocean. During the pool part, they got to the skill of clearing the water out of your mask, which is mildly unpleasant but not painful or even hard. They refused to do it. My instructor said if you can't clear a mask, you can't be cleared to dive. They spent a few thousand on private scuba lessons and wasted it all because they refused a pretty simple skill. I was at a club with a very rich friend of a friend who wanted to show off and impress the ladies, and he poured some super expensive champagne on the floor and was like, "What's money? I would have told him he's an idiot and should rethink his life then and there, but I saved that for after he picked up the tab that night. He was overall a very unpleasant guy. Did it work on any of the ladies? Nope, they milked him and went on with other dudes who didn't waste $800 worth of champagne to impress them. I wasn't one of them. When I was about 17, I had recently saved up enough money to buy a new smartphone. It took forever since I was a high schooler earning minimum wage and being told by my parents to use the money on certain things. So in total, I had very little say in what my money would be used for. So when I had enough for the smartphone, I was too excited. So it's been about a year with this phone. I plan on keeping it for a couple more since I prefer to use them until they're completely useless. I'm holding it and standing outside in a parking lot waiting for my friends inside the store. She comes out and comes up to me. She is spoiled rotten, mind you. She's hyped up about something. I never found out what. She grabbed my phone and I thought she was going to make a call since she left her phone at home. I warned her to be careful with it. No, she was not careful. She wasn't making a call at all. She threw my phone in the air and caught it. At this point, I was flipping crap and running over to her to take it back, but she threw it again much higher and tried to catch it. She did not catch it. My phone was completely shattered. I was horrified and cradling it like she just dropped my newborn child. I kept asking her why she did it. She just laughed and said, "I didn't think it was gonna break." I got angry and said that it took forever to save up for it. She replied, "Just ask your mom for a new one." Are you kidding me? I told her that not everyone can ask their parents for a couple hundreds of dollars for a new phone. She simply shrugged and said, "It's just $300, it's really not that much." She doesn't work, obviously. She doesn't know what $300 means to a teenager making minimum wage. She then asked me to tell my mom that I broke it so she wouldn't get in trouble. Needless to say, when I told my mom how it broke, the truth, my friend was pretty mad. In fact, she refused to buy me a new phone when I asked. She wouldn't tell her parents and she never invited me over again, so I could tell her mom. So a few years later, I'm out and about and in town again and I see my old friend's mom. We were catching up from the last time we saw each other, which was before the phone incident. Then her mom says, "It's a shame you two stopped talking because you were upset that you broke your phone." Well, I quickly ended the conversation and went my merry way. Side note, I have an iPhone now. I don't let anyone near it. Wow, I don't care who it would have been that did that to my phone and said, "Ask your mom for a new one." I'd go right to their parents and make them pay for the damn thing and give the kid a swift punch in the nose out of spite. That's a great idea. I need a time machine and some self-confidence and I could make that happen. My cousin threw a fit because last year he got 37 gifts and this year he only got 36. How's the room under the stairs treating ya? He's moved into his cousin's second bedroom now. The trust fund gal at my high school had a brand new loaded Eddie Bauer Edition Explorer and claimed he paid for it with his own hard-earned money. That was a $45K SUV. No way you paid for that as a 16-year-old kid with no real job. His spoiling went on in many ways and through college and beyond. Now he's a loser who parties like he's 19 with a job he got through daddy's connections. He's in his mid-30s with a failed marriage and no friends. I hate he never had a chance, but the guy's a real peen and always has been. I'm sure he will burn all his inheritance and life up. Shame to see. I knew a kid that once offered to take me out on his boat. I asked if his parents would be okay with us taking it. He informed me that he had bought the boat with his own money. What he meant was that he had bought a yacht with his allowance. At 18 years old, he had earned enough money through his allowance with his parents to purchase a $50K plus boat. I couldn't believe that. I used to get $20 a week to mow my parents' lawn, and my friends couldn't believe that they were willing to pay me to mow our own lawn. $20 for mowing? I got an extra $5 on top of the weekly $5 for all the indoor chores. Years later, I started paying my sister's boyfriend $20 to do my dishes and mowing because neither my wife or I could be asked to do it, and he was always asking to borrow money. During a holiday, my cousins came to visit from New York. Two of them were younger. I think one was 11, the other was 15 at the time, and we knew that their family had a decent amount of money. My grandmother not having a lot to give and not knowing what these two boys could want, giving them money cards with $20 apiece inside instead of gifts. When they opened them, the younger one laughed loudly and the older one just looked disgusted before looking up at my grandma's smiling face and saying, "What the heck do you think we can buy with $20? I like to believe that your grandma looked the older one straight in the eyes, then slapped the crap out of him, knocking him out cold, then calls the younger one over. He's crying, but your grandma demands him, then proceeds to slap him just as hard, but before contact, she stops. When he opens his eyes and realizes he's been spared, she clocks him with the opposite hand, knocking him out. I wish. She actually asked me afterwards if she hadn't given them enough, and if she could give them more, and I had to assure her that they were just spoiled brats. I worked at a sunglasses hut in South Florida. One day, a family of 4 came in to buy glasses. Now, I am used to people having money and buying stupidly expensive sunglasses, but the dad told the kids, who were probably 6 and 4, to get the glasses they wanted. Both grabbed 4 pairs of sunglasses that cost over $250 each. Then both kids pulled out wads of $100 bills to pay for them. Money is relative and material is material. But the one thing I cannot wrap my head around is expensive sunglasses. It's the dumbest marked up item in history. It's the same plastic and lens. So these $20 shades look and feel and do the same thing as these $300 shades, but you're going to fork the money out because it says Ray-Bans? Idiots. I have a pair of polarized sunglasses I spent $25 on, and I put on a pair of expensive shades to see the difference. Not a single difference. The only difference, in my opinion, is with prescription sunglasses. In that case, I'd have to buy $300 sunglasses since my lenses are outrageously expensive. It's why I don't own sunglasses.
Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.